This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam, and I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in. We'll never let the true facts come about more to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the grotto leader? Don't remember his name. You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
Now these people are in very high positions, yeah? Yes.
Welcome back to Subliminal Jihad, episode 48. I'm your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khalid.
And we've not escaped the vampire castle of the grotto.
Q&A IV.
Q&A IV.
Yeah, we weren't able to. We went for 3 hours and 45 minutes, and we had gotten halfway through the questions that we set out to answer, so we adjourned. And now we're back for part 2 of the Q&A.
Exactly. We decided to engage in some self-care and not record for 6 hours straight and record a new episode today.
Yeah, we definitely decided to observe some self-care. The problem is that, in doing that, I had, some time to ruminate on the prior questions, that night, because I had just been talking for more or less 4 straight hours. I was hungry, so I got up in the night to go munch something. And I was chilling in my kitchen eating, and I opened my computer and I was confronted by all of these Nic Pizzolatto articles and Mark Fisher's Wikipedia. And I found some truly great stuff that I felt I needed to share to answer these questions. First of all, the one thing I found about Mark Fisher was that prior to his death, which admittedly is tragic, he was planning on writing a book called Acid Communism.
Yes.
Which is all about sort of reclaiming the aesthetics of the psychedelic 60s and that era for positive sort of left purposes. That was he was planning this new book, and I guess it was excerpts of it were published in the anthology K-Punk, which is his collected and unpublished writings. It was you need to reclaim the imagining new political possibilities for the left. Dope.
Given everything that we've so far covered on this podcast, that immediately jumps out as I don't know if we want to as aesthetically and maybe artistically or libidinally appealing as that sounds. There's I think it's maybe it's maybe an understatement to say that there's a few there's a few contradictions there perhaps.
I don't know.
It's very Gen X. Did you get a better read on exactly what he meant by...
I didn't read his actual essays. I didn't look into it carefully, but I think if we have to watch out for the condemnatory eye of the priest or of the academic pedant. I think we can also watch out for the program to kill psyop as well, the subversive.
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely, it just kind of sidesteps the dark side of the role that LSD played in the 1960s and 70s, which, you know, I think it had much more of an impact, I would say, as a like disruption agent and a kind of a tactical suggestion that was able to derail the new left movements and kind of like scatter and confuse and like basically disrupt all that energy, which then led into perfectly segued into the era of neoliberalism. So it's like, okay, so like this drug sparked a kind of cultural revolution that looks basically like it was to varying degrees like managed by the very forces of like capital and empire that Mark Fisher wants to, you know, get past, basically, you know, the architects and enforcers of capitalist realism. And it produced, like we said in the Grateful Dead episodes, like it kind of was the perfect primer or like gateway drug, if you will, towards like the development of the neoliberal subject. Mm-hmm. And so I you know, but in some of the things, I guess like Commune magazine and like Eflux have played around with these ideas of acid communism. I just noticed in like this Medium article from 2019 by Stuart Mills called "What is Acid Communism?" He tries to kind of like, I guess there's been a lot of debate over like what exactly does it mean, and at least this guy makes the argument that that basically acid communism is not a doctrine of hippie-esque communal living and psychoactive drugs. The commune and psychoactive substances have a role to play in the philosophy of acid communism, but acid communism is not a valorization of a hedonistic, hallucinogenic culture. In my opinion, acid communism is an evolution of thought following from Fisher's work on the hauntology of culture and capitalist realism. I mean, so like a vanguard basically should be taking the acid to come up with new paradigms for transcending capitalism, but they're not really.
Well, it's interesting that like it doesn't make it. Well, if we're thinking of like, you know, acid communism is going to be like a site, or like, you know, the 60s counterculture is like a site for exploring like epistemological alternatives to capitalism, it doesn't make any sense. It literally nonsensical. Like, honestly, like, if you're going to look at epistemological alternatives to capitalism, you would look like to pre-capitalism, you know, into things like, you would look at like, you know, religion, honestly. Like, you would look at, like, not to say that those things are perfect in the same way that, you know, 60s counterculture isn't perfect, but might have some redeeming aspects, you know, like, that exists within capitalism. There's something communistic about like any of that stuff, like which I mean makes sense by saying like in this same Medium article, the communism element is debatably symbolic, simply representing a philosophy that goes beyond capitalist realism and thus into a world that could go beyond capitalism itself. I really think if some of the post-left people like were more like engaged with like some of the stuff, they would like also reject it, because a lot of it is like sort of like you know, hauntology, of course, as we talked about in our spirit photography episode. That's like Derridian, you know, that's postmodernist academic pedant stuff, you know. So I almost feel like that, like the fact he complained kind of more or less about like SJWs, so like I feel like that is why this Vampire Castle thing has, you know, such appeal to certain people. But I feel like maybe the rest of his work as, like, K-punk might seem to be kind of airy-fairy, academic, you know, postmodernism, in a way.
This doesn't sound like an escape from postmodernism, this acid communism. In fact, it sounds more, I'm seeing here in an Eflux blog post about it, that there have been other names used to kind of express it, including, get this, freak left, psychedelic socialism, and in the UK, acid Corbynism. How did that work out for y'all, mates? You know, like, mate. Acid Bernieism, you know, you know, which I guess there was like a symposium, the 2018 Transmedial Festival in Berlin had a workshop called Building Acid Communism, and workshop leaders gave the audience a series of prompts aimed at, quote, unveiling and exploring the precise idea of freedom that motivated left-wing activists. These questions inquired into how participants experienced boredom, whether fashion and style mattered to their political identity, and the last time they felt truly free from work, among other issues. Cool. I mean, this sounds exactly like the kind of navel-gazy stuff that, like, Christopher Lasch was, like, railing against in the early 70s. And it is interesting that, like, it does, I don't know, because Christopher Lasch is somebody that is also very popular among maybe a lot of the same people that had been really all about Mark Fisher for the last few years. You know, like, I think like justifiably so. And you know, there's a lot. I know, like, Zero Books is, like, doing a series. Like, obviously, I think, like, the Red Scare girls are pretty into Lash. I read Lash in, like, 2012. I'm not bragging, but, you know, I had a Lash phase like way before all of these people in the kind of post-Occupy days. So it's like, I'm curious to, I might have even said this before, but it's like curious to watch him having this, like, resurgence. But there also seems to be, in a way, like, maybe not like, there are contradictions, obvious ones, between Mark Fisher's ideas of, like, acid communism and a lot of Lash's ideas about the New Left, which he was, like, very critical of for almost precisely the kind of things that Mark Fisher is saying that acid communism should, like, bring to the forefront and center. So on top of that, it's just incredibly vague, and I don't know. I feel like there's more. I feel like there's more, like, revolutionary ontological potential in exposing the '60s New Left acid culture as, like, an op than there is trying to, like, embrace, like, try to salvage parts of it. There's more potential
in the woke satanic panic than, like, reclaiming the radical potential of, like, the straight Satans and you know, like,
exactly 100%. Exactly. Yeah. So should we contemplate whether the Hell's Angels have, like, achieved, like, true freedom or something like that? Like, that's where I feel like a lot of that thinking tends to go.
Nothing is freer from work than being a member of the Straight Satans and, like, you know, getting a bunch of LSD from Richard Owsley and
Augustus Owsley, Stanley.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Augustus Owsley, sorry.
Owsley Stanley III.
Richard Hunter. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Augustus Owsley.
Or Robert
Stanley
Hunter.
He sounds like he should get sucked into a tube in, like, Willy Wonka's laboratory, but,
so is that the... So I think he has something that, you know, without over-essentializing generations, I think is kind of like a Gen X. That is a common thing, I feel like, with Gen Xers, is, like, they're deeply influenced by, like, 60s and 70s pop culture, but they were, like, so young when it kind of shaped their world, and a lot of these more sus things, like, hadn't come out yet, that it's, like, still a huge blind spot to them, that, like, wait, what? Like, even if they think hippies are lame, which many Gen Xers do, because they grew up, like, thought it was, like, a boomer thing.
Mark Fisher used to think hippies were lame, but then he, like, rediscovered their quote-unquote radical potential, like, as if, you know, he found, like, some lost manuscript or something. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's stupid, but...
Yeah, how can you ignore that, like, Tim Leary was, like, an FBI informant and was, like, actually trying to do a kind of acid communism, honestly. If you think about, like, that weird interview he had with Walter Bauer, where he was, like, going off about how he wanted to turn on, like, certain targeted intelligentsia to, like, you know, because, like, the next world war is going to be fought over, like, the mind, and, you know, we needed to, like, stay ahead in, like, the brain race or something like that, and acid was a way to sort of, like, recruit these, like, agents in, like, high places, basically. So, like, you know, and that was not, like, really fundamentally a radical project, and it didn't have a radical liberatory effect, and, you know, led to, I think it did, like an industrial acid, like, kind of led to corroding the foundations of, like, actually existing socialism, which also is another thing that I think this is something of the whole school of, like, Fisherites, like, don't ever reckon with. And I'm not saying that, like, oh, well, obviously they should hold up, like, you know, state socialism or Marxist-Leninism in the 20th century is, like, fucking based and awesome and, you know, the best, and, like, why don't they center that? But I noticed like even from one of their like their living saints, Slavoj Žižek, who actually grew up in a, you know, capital C communist country, seems to like have nothing to say about like his own. I'm sorry, it's funny because it's so popular these days to talk about one's lived experience. Like you never hear Žižek talk about like growing up in Yugoslavia and like what his opinion. He'll make these kind of like jokes of like, you know, kind of like in communist Yugoslavia we joke like nobody ever have bread, haha, you know, that kind of shit. That's like kind of annoying and basic. Like it's like those communist jokes. It's like train never run on time, like, you know, you know, like train is always on time because it never leaves station because it's broken, ha ha ha, you know, just like shit, like really like puerile shit like that. And it's like, why doesn't he talk more about, because also like Yugoslavia was an interesting example that had a much more like hybridized model of like state socialism than like some of the other countries. And also just because like that was the context in which like the 20th century struggle between capital and, you know, socialism or communism, whatever, like that's really where the action was. That was incredibly important. It informed all of the domestic struggles that were going on in the US. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's an academia kind of thing in the certain schools these guys got plugged into, but it's almost like, oh, well, like we're going to kind of just like ignore that. We're just not going to really talk about like actually existing socialism. We're going to like talk about like up to 1917 and then like to like start again at like 1991. And I don't know, like I just find it like, I wish there was maybe a little bit more maybe like historical diving into like in what ways was like the largest like communist, you know, superpower basically undermined and destroyed, and like, you know, as a result, like why do we live in a world in which like that we do live in a capitalist realism world now, because regardless of what you could say about the Cold War era, like the 70s, it was possible to imagine some kind of different world beyond capitalism. You know, like I mean, even, you know, LaRouche was running around in the 70s saying that the collapse of the United States was like imminent, you know, probably by the end of the decade or something, like economic collapse, basically. And that was like a common thing in the 70s. Like a lot of these, you know, edgy kind of Maoist kind of groups in the US and in Western Europe, like a lot of them did kind of feel like it's like the teleological bubble of like the 20th century Marxism hadn't been like popped yet. So it still felt quite, and a lot of, you know, in the Soviet Union, a lot of people believe that like, well, you know, this is like an ongoing struggle, but like eventually the sort of the mechanics of the dynamics of capitalism are going to kind of like end in our favor, because it you know, the rate of profit will fall, the crises will intensify, and eventually, you know, you're going to win crisis in the Kremlin, and the U.S. is going to like elect Ross Perot and like withdraw from NATO, and basically like, you know, you're going to have like, you know, military dominance, and then like there will probably have to be, you know, like a reverse kind of absorption, like America will have to like kind of hybridize to become socialist or something like that. But then, you know, the opposite happened. I don't know. I feel like that's all relevant, but like I don't get a huge, maybe I haven't read enough Fisher, but I don't get like a huge, it's very also Gen Xer, like very disinterested in general from like the Eastern Bloc, and like that's why all these Gen X people who are music nerds have no knowledge of like Eastern Bloc music. Like if you ask them about, you know, Yugoslav dark wave or like punk or something like that, and like Eastern Europe in the 80s, like they've literally never heard of it and didn't know it existed. It's kind of, I don't know, like there's a lot of reasons for it, but it feels a little bit there's a little solipsistic kind of vibe. Anyways, I'm ranting, but
yeah,
does any of that make sense? Like there, where, I don't know, like it.
I understand your frustration. Yeah, we should address the new questions, but I did want to say that one thing that I was doing while I was up that night eating was that I searched for this Nic Pizzolatto quote that we had searched for. It took me a little while to dig it up, but I did, and it did not disappoint, like including the context of it. It actually wasn't in the Hollywood Reporter article. The Hollywood Reporter article has those like hilarious pictures of him like with his like motorcycle and his leather jacket, but it's actually in a Vanity Fair article that the quote that we've held on to for all these years actually occurred. I found some like really annoying things that he said like incidentally while trying to dig up this quote. I found one where he's like talking about the pathology of his serial killer that he constructed, as part of a rant about how someone criticized Cole's monologues, as being a freshman year philosophy, and he's like, they're actually much deeper and more nuanced and grounded in legitimate scientific and philosophical thought. But, so he's talking about, he literally said those words, but I feel like so cringe. But he then said, like, our serial killer's pathology is wrapped up in culturally relevant symbols, such as, the idea of prayer. One of the necessities of prayer, the prayer pose being the blindfold. I have no idea what that, I guess...
I think the victim in season 1 is like a range and a prayer pose,
Yeah, he says, in order to effectively pray, you're going to have to ignore some very basic facts about the world. Like, shut the fuck up, like, lame, like, kind of, very freshman year,
that is big, like, that is very big Red Nietzsche once energy.
Yeah, I realized, he was kind of, well, I guess one of these articles quoted, like, some Cole quote saying, like, some linguistic anthropologists believe that religion is a mimetic virus that, and I'm like, oh, you mean Richard Dawkins? Like, that's what Richard Dawkins thinks. Yeah, like, by way to this, something, to this quote, something really great that I found was that recently, in April 2020, he went on a rant on Instagram about how he really wants to write a Batman movie. Like begging DC to hire him to write a Batman movie. He said, Batman's no-kill policy is valid and should always remain. He literally sounds like he's on cocaine or something, like, while he's writing this. But the policy does not exist because killing makes me as bad as them or some kindergarten bullshit. That never held any water at all. Batman's no-kill policy exists because, this is when he enters into all caps, Batman's real enemy is death. Death is his real enemy. Yes, he says, Batman is a story of how one human saint turned a life-defining tragedy into the pinnacle of human achievement and the single greatest humanitarian crusade the world has ever known. And his money doesn't matter. It is merely a convenience. It actually adds to his heroism. Alright, his wealth means he could have done literally anything else than what he devotes his life to. Batman's superpower is that he thinks of everything, and he has the strongest will of the species. And this is the best part. If he had time to strategize, Batman could credibly defeat God.
Whoa. Okay. That, so, like, wait, basically, I don't know, it sounds like a weird, like, so Batman's like Elon Musk who, like, beats up, muggers, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, and that makes him even more heroic that he devotes his life to, like, crime, and, like, it's literally so pathetic, like, he literally says, like, hi, DC, wave emoji, DC, hi, we'll work for free.
We'll work for free?
Yeah, and someone in the comments asked him what his stance was on the death of the author theory, and he said, like, here's one off the top of my head. In my interpretation, Holmes was the villain, and his true genius was in framing people like Moriarty for his crimes while making the authorities believe he was an ally. Valid, because nothing means anything, right? Words are hollow signifiers meant to be arranged in no real effect other than as fetish objects. My imagination is just as valid as Conan Doyle's. Or is that lousy fan fiction masquerading as critical analysis? Are postmodernist quote-unquote critics just talentless artists trying to act creative? Who cares? They're irrelevant in every way. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, like, Roland Barthes is, like, more significant than Nic Pizzolatto, like, will ever be. And, like, his writing is much more substantive and interesting than, like, any of the, like, the Batman movie that we can look forward to where Batman fights God. Hits him with a batarang. Anyway,
and I think that's not even supposed to be a veiled reference to him, like, fighting Superman as, like, a stand-in for God, but, like, literally God. Like,
I guess, well, if he had time to strategize, he has the strongest will of the species, so he could become the Ubermensch, and, like, actually he could beat God if he had time to strategize, which doesn't make any sense at all, and, like, just shows, like, the plurality of his entire, like, philosophical outlook, and, like, the fact that he's just, like, upset because, like his parents were religious and like they said that they had visions. And
was he raised Catholic? Was he raised Catholic?
I think so. Yeah, he mentioned.
Probably.
I read some of these interviews with him, and he was talking about how like he went to these prayer meetings. People would say like, "Oh, I'm having a vision of Archangel Michael or something," and he would be like, "What the hell? Like these adults, they control my world, but they can't tell the difference between a vision and imagining something. Like whoa, like."
What is this? Like 2005? Like come on. This is very. Yeah, I don't know. That is unfortunate. I feel like
it's really there's a lot of cringe.
I can't prove it. I cannot prove it, but I have this like sneaking suspicion that maybe Pizzolatto has been like hanging out with Peter Thiel. Up in the Hollywood
possibly,
Hills.
Yeah.
They do have common connections involved. They're part of that circle, and maybe he sees Peter Thiel as like Batman.
Maybe.
Or
it's
vice
incredibly
versa.
lame that he wrote this like rant, including like all cap sentences about how Batman's enemy is death, and like taking a strong opinion about like Batman and like how he wants to do it. Like honestly, like we're gonna talk maybe about Alan Moore later. Like one of our questions is an Alan Moore question, and I think like it's really telling that Alan Moore, who like created some of the most iconic Batman stories ever, like now views him as like a childish like character who's like not substantial enough to to support like a real meaningful story. Like I think that is like telling. But anyway, this is the coup de grace, and then we can move on to the other half of the questions that we didn't get to last time. This is really great. This is from the Vanity Fair article that was written up about Nic Pizzolatto in, I guess, during the first season of True Detective. Or while he was working on season 2, that's from 2015. The author obviously is like a big admirer, and he kind of does like a Nic Pizzolatto impression. So just for context, like prior, he talked about how it's important for him, Nick as a writer, to imagine what his characters wake up thinking about. So anyway, as the crew set up cameras beneath the bleachers on a dirt bike track, Nick retreated to his trailer to punch up dialogue. When it works, his keyboard goes like a Tommy gun. When it doesn't, he sits back and stares out the window. The San Gabriels, the evening wind, big trucks groaning in the passes. In a few hours, he'll return to his family in Ojai. Meanwhile, he's here, entirely present in his interregnum between seasons, the show-running auteur a moment before the next moment. You can taste the danger, a hint of mercury in the water. Nick will have to pay for the sin of his success, as everyone pays for everything. He raised the bar too high that first season. People want answers from a show like that. They want to be told what to think and how to live. Of course, a show can't give those kinds of answers, because even a great show is made not by God, but by a TV writer with black pens, whiteboards, takeout menus, and research. Instead of answers, you get reversals, reveals, and special effects. That is, more TV. You feel empty. With time, this emptiness turns to frustration. The better the show, the greater the frustration. In the end, nothing satisfies. There should be a term for that special kind of melancholy that follows the finale of your favorite show. What kind of things do you wake up thinking about? I asked. I have to rebuild myself every morning, Nick told me. What's happening? Where am I? I've got to locate myself in time. I wake up raw and have to put myself together and focus and be like, all right, Pizzolatto, where are you today? Are you ready to go? Are you ready to do the things you need to do? So I love that quote because it's like an incredibly pretentious way of like expressing something that everyone experiences. Like waking up and thinking like, okay, well, what do I have to do today?
He's got to build himself.
Gotta rebuild himself. Yeah, rebuild myself every morning. I gotta locate myself in time. Wow. Are you ready to go? Anyway, are you ready to go? Are you ready to go? On to question 8, finally.
Yes, I am. I am ready to go. Let's hop on that chopper and ride on to the second half here.
Yes,
so
here we go.
I guess I'll read number 8 from Molly Ringwald. I assume it is that Molly Ringwald.
The actual Molly Ringwald. Yeah.
Thanks.
I really love your
Welcome
work
to the Grotto.
in Secret Life of the American Teenager. And Riverdale.
Breakfast Club, great. Okay,
what?
so was she?
No, she was,
so.
But I was pretending that I didn't know. It was a bit.
Okay.
So I was doing a bit.
Doing a bit. Okay.
Well, you gotta have jokes.
Yeah. Apologies. Okay, apologies if you've gone over this before, but I haven't heard the whole catalog. But I'm curious what thoughts, wild speculations you have on the Babalon working and Jack Parsons generally. Thanks.
We definitely talked a little bit about him in the Kenneth Anger episode. But yeah, I mean, my favorite theory about the Babalon working is the one that, like, Greys didn't show up until the Babalon working, and that the Babalon working, like, caused... I think we kind of touched on this in the Kenneth Anger episode, actually. Yeah. That the Babalon working, like, caused UFOs to appear as a war engine, and the Greys are, like, interdimensional beings that were, like, invoked by it.
Sure, and Marjorie Cameron, who is like one of the participants in the Babalon working, central to it, the Scarlet Woman, she started seeing UFOs. I forget if it was, we talked about it in the Kenneth Anger episode, but I forget if like she saw UFOs like right before or right after the Babalon working, but it was right around that time period of like the late 40s,
she saw them before, I believe, but she considered them to be like a war engine. And then like when they talked about when flying saucers became a thing, she associated that with the war engine that she had seen, as I recall.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So, a war engine was supposed to herald the new age that they were all anticipating.
There's so much with like Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, who is also a participant in the Babalon working, and they were both in the Agape Lodge of the OTO. They'd both known Crowley, at least briefly, near the end of his life, because he came out to Pasadena to set it up, and then of course Parsons, I believe co-founded JPL, and did all this rocketry stuff, and then died under mysterious circumstances. I forget if we got into it, but I think there was suspicion that Howard Hughes had assassinated Jack Parsons.
Yes, I believe that there was. That's what Cameron always believed. That he was somehow behind it. Yeah.
And I forget exactly why, because he was like building. He was developing contacts with some group that Hughes didn't like, and
Jack Parsons had previously worked for Hughes Aircraft. And I guess he was accused of removing confidential documents from Hughes and was fired. I guess an FBI investigation assessed them. This is from the same article, the Brian Butler article, that I think you can probably find in our show notes that we talked about in the Kenneth Anger episode. The Parsons are an odd, unusual pair. This is what the FBI said. In that they do not live by the commonly accepted code of married life and are both very fascinated by anything unusual or morbid, such as voodooism, cults, homosexuality, and religious practices that are, quote, different. Subject seems to be very much in love with his wife, but she is not at all affectionate and does not appear to return his affection. Deleted. She is the dominating personality of the two and controls the activities and thinking of the subject to a very considerable degree. It is the opinion, name withheld, if subject were to have been in any way willfully involved in any activities of an espionage nature, it would probably have been on the instigation of his wife. But he was eventually cleared of all wrongdoing, but he still lost the security clearance, and that was a big blow to him. Then he died shortly thereafter. In that same year, I think, actually. January, he lost the security clearance. June, he died.
Wow, got blown up in his laboratory during kind of experiment.
He dropped a vial of mercury fulminate. Oops.
Oops.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yes. Yes, allegedly.
Yeah. And so I mean, then of course, there's the weird L. Ron Hubbard spin-off of all of that, and I'm sure there's so much material we can get into one day when we do a SC **** ology episode.
Yeah.
Just to duck the algorithm there.
Right.
They are very litigious. My favorite kind of curveball theory of the Babalon working is that exactly 9 months after Michael Aquino was born.
Oh, right. Yes. And he himself, didn't he brag about that? And he said, he had the same swastika of curly hair on his chest that Crowley had, or something like that.
He had a swastika of curly hair on his chest?
That's how he himself described it. I mean, I'm sure that, a normal person would just call it, a curly hair or something, or not ascribe the shape of a swastika to his chest hair. But, of course, you're talking about Aquino, so he had to, go that route with it.
Always on his mind. Always on his mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot there. I think that period, they intersect.
Swastika of hair. Yes. This is what Aquino said in the Book of Coming Forth by Night. Sorry, I just found this quote. Collectors of magical happenstance may take note of the following concerning the persona of Michael Aquino. I think actually shout out to some guy on Twitter, Saturnalia, something about the Saturnalia, first pointed this out to us.
Oh, yeah.
Because
They did, yeah.
Yeah, Saturnalia Sund 1. Saturnalia Ultimate Survivor Sundown. Shout out to that guy for pointing this out to us into this subject. Collectors of magical happenstance may note the following concerning the persona of Michael Aquino. Bear in mind, this is Aquino himself writing. It's hard to say because it's third person. He was born in 1946, precisely 9 months after a working by Crowley's California disciples to create a homunculus per a secret instruction of Crowley to the 9th degree of his Ordo Templi Orientis. He was also born dead, raising the question of the nature of the force inhabiting his subsequently revived body. On his chest, he bears the same world swastika of hair borne by Crowley and Buddha, and his eyebrows have always naturally curled upward into the horns described in the biblical Book of Revelation.
Wow.
He has taken, that's true, the name of the Prince of Darkness as part of himself, Ra and Set, he who speaks as Set. Cool.
Okay. I always wondered about his eyebrow. I assumed he, used some beard wax or something to make them that way. But
well, I did. I also had a professor who had eyebrows like that would just grow up. I feel like
it does happen
some people
occasionally.
Just lack that eyebrow regulating hormone or whatever, and they just grow wildly.
Wow.
Well,
okay.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it was. I feel like he would have said if it was the Babylon working, but he was born in 1946, so around the same time as the.
I forget when was the Babylon working. Was that in 45?
It was in 46. But I'm sure Aquino would have said that it was, but. It was still his California disciples, precisely 9 months after the working. What was Aquino's birthday?
I feel like it was September, either 46 or 47. It was September 46, I think. So then it's these rituals. Yeah. The rituals began in January 46, so that would be about 9 months later.
That. He didn't say Babylon working, which I feel like you'd think he would because it's so famous, but maybe not.
Maybe he was winking at you a little bit, like a series of certain rituals conducted by Jack Parsons.
That is a very Aquino thing. Yeah,
real heads would know.
What? Yeah, I guess
what he's
Jack
referring
Parsons'
to.
9th degree Ordo Templi Orientis. That's what Aquino was getting
I assume. Yeah.
Yeah. After Hubbard defrauded him of his life savings, he resigned from the OTO. Oh well.
There was something about stealing a boat that he gave him money for, and he ran off with Marjorie Cameron and the boat. There was they had a whole messy breakdown basically. A falling out. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll definitely we'll dive into that world later.
We're not done with that. We're not done with that topic. That'll come up again. Yeah.
Definitely
There's a lot of these subjects where we haven't gone into it just because the Babylon working as a famous kind of occult topic, like occult Americana, so it's kind of like we're just trying to explore a slightly less well-trod terrain, but
For sure.
We haven't done an episode about who is Crowley or anything. We just kind of brought him up all the time. He's featured so heavily in a lot of our episodes. I don't know if we'll do that, but we'll definitely you'll definitely get some more content in that vein. This is the general universe that we operate in most of the time. So
absolutely, absolutely. Okay. So you'd want to move on to number 9. You want to read that?
Yeah. Word. Sure. I was curious. Oh, this is from Jimmy Falun Gong. Yes. I was curious about your opinions on Program to Kill. I know the Grotto has talked about it, and it was mentioned in the Freakin' episode. I'm over halfway done with it right now, and I've caught McGowan in some exaggerations, but I still think he's onto something there, re satanic murder cults and programmed serial killers. Would love to hear more thoughts on this book and/or that idea. Word.
So
definitely reasonable that there would be some exaggerations. I definitely think that McGowan is capable of that. I actually haven't read Program to Kill. You've definitely recommended it to me. I will read it when we do our Program to Kill episode.
I think it's worthwhile to do because it ties together a lot of other things that we've already gone through, and I did read it a few years ago, though I'm a little bit like fuzzy. I remember kind of the overall impact of it. There's a lot of information in it. And
I remember talking about it like at the tail end of one of our episodes, kind of going into the idea of like the genesis of like the quote unquote serial killer as a phenomena, like the sort of cultural boundedness of like this, thing. It's kind of like in a way passed on, and now we've sort of moved on to sort of mass shooter as more of the archetypal figure of fear or sociopathic rampage. Zodiac type person.
For sure, and I mean it does tie together because of course I don't know, I forget if we just released, when we're recording this, we just released the Laurel Canyon episodes, but I forget if we really talked about how Dr. George Hodel's son believes that he was the Zodiac killer.
I don't think that we did mention that. Maybe we did.
I don't know if that's really like confirmed, but he definitely was a suspect. Well, actually, no, he wasn't. He was more of a suspect in the Black Dahlia case, but his own son kind of went into, and I think Program to Kill and Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon both reference that. And I mean, that's while he was kind of more of an old timer, that period of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s was just like, it really does stand out as this like bizarre era, and then it kind of just stopped. And I don't know, maybe there's a few reasons you could make for that in terms of maybe like I don't know, you could say greater visibility would make it harder, but also serial killers, like the narrative around them is that they love publicity. Maybe you could say DNA testing made it more difficult, but I feel like the whole frame of serial killers, I think like McGowan is correct in critiquing it, and he hits on some really resonant things. Like it basically, like the whole idea of like Mindhunter, that Fincher show on Netflix was like very kind of unsatisfying and annoying to watch, and reminding myself that like there was this like very like fancy FBI like profiling paradigm that was kind of developed in this period to kind of explain why serial killers existed and what motivated them and all that stuff. And I feel like it's so ingrained through like movies and pop culture and media coverage and true crime stuff that we all just kind of like accept it as like, oh yeah, that's what it was. But then if that's what it was, then why did it just stop? Why did it like start? I mean, there always have been certain serial killers, like, of course, right? There's a Jack the Ripper. There's like certain cases throughout history.
Jack the Ripper, I feel like, around the time of Jack the Ripper, people treated it as something relatively unprecedented or strange.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
and there were these like kind of moments, like these big kind of aberrations, but you didn't have kind of like a whole like litany of serial killers roaming the country, as somebody in the Grotto said recently. The Riders on the Storm song, there's a killer on the road, his brain is squirming like a toad. I guess that was a reference to some serial killer in the 50s, but it's like, I don't know, just pointing out, like before MK Ultra started, it was incredibly rare to have serial killers. Of course, that doesn't mean causality, but also like when the Vietnam War started, and that's a big point that McGowan makes. And actually, just like tangentially to that, I just recently watched the like Netflix miniseries about Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. And I feel like there is a part of his story, I think McGowan goes into it in Program to Kill, but pretty much gets like glossed over in this like very highly produced kind of salacious docuseries, and that is that like one of the most important people in Richard Ramirez's life when he was a teenager was his older cousin who had gone to Vietnam and was a Green Beret involved in the Phoenix program. And then he came back to, I believe, Texas, and he started showing young Richard all of these Polaroids of the horrible shit that he was doing in the Phoenix program. I mean, we're talking like torture, mutilation, rape, like basically the whole litany of like the horrible things that Richard Ramirez would end up doing, because he would switch up methods of killing. He would rape people. He would like molest children, but then not kill them, and then kill other random people. He was like all over the map. He was almost like trying out every kink. And he was also a very avid devil worshiper. So yes. Another L for the False Memory Syndrome Foundation or whatever, or just people being like, satanic panic. Like this guy wrote 666 on his hand when he went to court and dressed up
acid,
like
right? So he was an acid communist, I believe.
Yes, he was an acid communist.
Certain radical revolutionary potential for imagining new possibilities of elsewise futures, such as the future of having your blood sucked.
Yep, I remember reading something maybe way back when we were doing our Aquino episodes in the beginning, that at one point somebody relayed a story where Richard Ramirez traveled up to San Francisco and started hanging around the house of Anton LaVey. And I think he approached him one day, and like Anton LaVey, I believe, kind of recounted this. And of course, big grain of salt, hard to trust what that guy says. But he does say that like basically Richard Ramirez like showed up and like was kind of creepy and like really wanted to meet Anton LaVey, because he was like, you're my hero, like I'm a Satanist, like I want to work for you or something like that. And Anton LaVey allegedly kind of like shooed him off and just thought he was like weird, and I guess that would happen periodically with him. Of course, Ramirez did go up to San Francisco and hung out in the Tenderloin for a while after things got too hot in LA. But like you get a lot of combinations in there. So even though he wasn't a military veteran, his cousin like came home and basically like taught him the Phoenix program. That's according to kind of the official narrative, and kind of like inspired this really dark thing. And then he started experimenting with LSD and Satanism, and then just exploded into this like ridiculous crime spree all around LA. And like at trial, he kind of like dressed up like a rock star. He had these like big sunglasses and like wore all black and would like laugh and stuff like during the trial. And I think he died of cancer in jail. I forget if he was on death row. I think he was on death row, like waiting. But like that story, it's kind of like, well, okay, so like, wait, like that doesn't happen anymore. Now we have mass shooters. And I think, as we were also talking in the grotto the other day, like there was that recent Green Beret mass shooter in Rockford, Illinois, who just, for kind of apropos of nothing, just started open fire on some people in a bowling alley and shot 5 people, killed 3, all older men, and then got arrested. And it's interesting, the spectacular effect of both the serial killer phenomenon and the mass shooter phenomenon. Like they're so seamlessly exploited by the media, basically to gin up this like fear reaction and terrify people. Like that comes through very clearly in the Richard Ramirez documentary. Is like people in LA were like kind of freaked out because like it's just, he's a sicko. Like I mean, he even looks like the sicko at the beginning of Cobra, who starts blasting people in the grocery store, like, and he is kind of a hero of the new world if you think about it. But like the randomness of the violence and everything, and like not being able to ascribe a normal kind of causality to it, is just a guy who's like fucking sick. Like that really fucking freaks people out. And now there's like the more modern thing of like there's a sicko like on 4chan who's gonna go insane, and then he's gonna get an AR-15 and run to like a school or a public place, and then kind of do all their serial killing in one spectacular fell swoop, and then probably get killed by police. But like you wonder, I think the article is about that like bowling alley shooter. He was a Green Beret sergeant, like 37 years old, And, they said, oh, well, it seems he might have been suffering from PTSD. I guess he'd done multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and had just gotten back like earlier in the year from a tour in Afghanistan. And, is that a case of, one of our Rambos like malfunctioning from combat stress and like all the fucked up things they've had to do over the years? Or is like it something a little more going on? Like he's literally malfunctioning because he was like, I don't know, conditioned or programmed to kill, and like it, I don't know. But it did seem, I think somebody pointed it out the other day, that some of these cases get blown up and they basically get converted into like fear porn, and then other cases are like, oh damn, that was tragic, and then like the media doesn't talk about it. So like that was a case where the media did not jump all over it and make it like a thing about gun control or a thing about, oh, was this guy like a MAGA QAnon maniac? Like they didn't add anything to like politicize it. It was like, ooh shit, like one of our special forces guys like snapped, like let's like shut up about it, like let's just report it and like move on, like we're not going to do that. Whereas something else would get like he killed almost as many people as I get it's like kind of different, but like the Capitol storming and things like that, like just the level of like that's being treated literally as 9/11. But like 5 people died in this, like 5 people got shot, 3 died. But it wasn't, folded into any bigger narrative to kind of like push for anything.
Norms were violated, I guess. Whereas it is normal for there to be like a mass shooting at a random like public gathering place. So I don't know. Yeah, democracy was attacked. So
have you forgotten how we felt that day with our heroes under fire? I really am tempted to do like I'm tempted to do like a super cut with like AOC's live stream, like, and that song, and like bringing the urn out to the Capitol. That big ritual they had. I watched yesterday.
What was the urn? Was it the urn of the Capitol Police?
Well, they kept saying they're bringing the remains of Officer Sick Nick to lie in state, and every other time I've seen like a president or whatever, like they pulled up with a huge hearse, and I assume they're gonna like bring his body like in a coffin to like put it out there. And I don't know, it almost like it jarred me a little bit when they kept talking about like his remains are going to lie in state. And then they did this whole kind of, military ritual, like opening up the door and like, I see they're removing the remains now. And they just pulled out like a tiny little urn and then like marched up the stairs. And I was like, oh, so they cremated him already. And I've seen other things that are maybe there's been a little fuzziness over like, do they have video evidence of him being hit with a fire extinguisher? Is the kind of thing that if Nancy Pelosi gets her 1/6 commission to look into this, like, are they not going to be able to do like a second autopsy on his body now because they cremated it? I don't know. Just like but that's a whole nother thing. But it just the whole ritual of it was so big, and then other things can happen and we just kind of like don't talk about it. So I think the selective the spotlight that gets put on some of these crimes can really, I suppose maybe you could say there still are serial killers, it's just the media doesn't care about them anymore, so they don't get reported. But I think it's more likely that this was a phenomenon that this is a phenomenon that probably like for example, like targeting like homeless people or something like that. I could see that being a thing that would fly under the radar.
There was one guy recently who was like a targeter of gay men, like in Canada, I want to say, like that I remember hearing about. Like, similar.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. The guy who had the whole documentary where he like tortured cats and things like that.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's a common serial killer behavior. So, was it the Green River Killer? I think that might have been.
That was older. That was older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know why.
There's a lot there. Then the whole cult, the Hand of Death cult that got paramilitary training in the Everglades that Henry Lee Lucas talked about. Like that's very interesting and bizarre. And there was like the Matamoros cult down by the border that abducted like a college student in the late 80s and then sacrificed him in like a satanic like drug ritual. They were like a drug trafficking gang that had like a shamanic, like a sketchy like shaman leader, very like Mandy style almost. And when they finally raided their ranch in the middle of nowhere, they found, I think, like several dozen bodies or remains of bodies or things like that. And they were basically abducting and sacrificing people. To some god, to the devil or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't.
That'd be a good one to go into. There's some good old school like late '80s journalism about that, because that was a real kind of thing where they're like, yep, there's a satanic cult, they're trafficking drugs, they're kidnapping people, and they're sacrificing them folks. That was a real thing that happened. And you have to imagine it probably wasn't the only case of it happening. But yeah, I mean, there's big military links between like Dahmer was U.S. Army stationed in West Germany. There's a number of other serial killers that were in the military, and which, I mean, was kind of more common back then, but still, McGowan's thesis is that like the Phoenix program was brought home, and I think that's very compelling. Whether that was like directly brought home consciously, or if like training millions of young men to be like cold-blooded killers and then bringing them back home where there was like joblessness and they all had PTSD. There definitely was an explosion of violent crime, starting in the late 60s. As people would go over there and then come back. I think that definitely had like an impact on it. But I don't know. I kind of want to like reread it again and do a little more research to really like flesh that thesis out. But it's intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the guy who I was thinking of was he was named Bruce MacArthur. He was a Toronto serial homicide, perpetrator. A 66-year-old self-employed Toronto landscaper. So that was pretty recent. He was arrested on January 18th, 2018. So, yeah.
But still a boomer,
Yeah, still a boomer, true. Yeah.
Like, all these serial killers have been boomers or older.
There definitely was like a golden era of serial killers. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, yeah, there's I feel like there is definitely a certain cultural aspect to it where, what's in vogue at the time. Like, now, like, if you're going to be a Zoomer as someone's going to kill multiple people, you're going to want to do, like, Brandon Tarrant type thing where you're going to live stream some kind of mass shooting that's going to make the most impact. It's interesting because I feel like there's a lot of like serial killer media. People are still very fascinated by serial killers, but maybe to people who have like these sort of sadistic tendencies, like being a serial killer doesn't have the same appeal. I don't know. Or maybe they're just, maybe it's the same thing where they're still around, but there isn't the same attention to them. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it might really have something to do with the fact that like it's harder and harder to actually do that and like not get caught nowadays. If you're trying to stretch it out over years or something like that, like your odds of getting, I don't know, caught after like one or two murders, and probably be a lot harder to like play the games of like Zodiac, like sending cryptic letters to the media and stuff without with all the forensics and electronic surveillance they have nowadays. It's like, oh, okay, like this person got abducted on this street corner, like let's watch the surveillance cameras all day, and like you could get a much easier line on it. And once, I mean, it took a while for them to get Ramirez, but once they got, I forget how they did it, it was like a very weird roundabout way where they like got like kind of his name and his face and everything, and then once they did, it was actually it was like residents of East LA that saw him like running through the streets because he came back to LA and saw like his face everywhere and like freaked out and started running through the streets, and he ran through like a Latino neighborhood and people just started beating the shit out of him. And like almost were about to like lynch him basically until the cops showed up and like took him away. So, great job, LAPD. Didn't even technically catch the Night Stalker. Yeah. So, okay. Well, yeah, we'll come back to that at a later point. I mean, do a deep read, whatever.
Definitely we could do a Program to Kill episode. I was reading recently that David Berkowitz, I think it was David Berkowitz, who was the son of Sam, killer, said that he was, part of some satanic cult. And that actually,
that's a huge
group supporting him.
That's a huge thing, is that he was part of a cult and that he was like one of several people. I think he said that for years. I think Maury Terry, the guy who wrote like The Ultimate Evil, I think he did a lot of like reporting or research into that and was pretty convinced. I know like Ed Opperman is very convinced of that and believes that the Process Church had something to do with it. Yeah, that's another thing I want to read into more, because I don't find it unconvincing that the Process Church is very like spooky and weird and pops up in like random places.
Definitely.
And, yeah. So I wouldn't rule that out either. Okay, so should we move on to number 10?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, 10 is substantial.
This is a big one.
Yeah. If you want to read that one.
Sure. Okay, so this is from A Good Flying Wren, new addition to the Grotto.
Yes,
welcome.
First time questioner.
Yeah. So they wrote, for the Q&A, while doing research on Hollow Earth stuff for a book, I noticed that there was some real weirdness going on with the meme post-World War II, where the narrative morphs into underground Nazi UFO bases, largely thanks to the, quote, secret diary of Admiral Byrd. That is interesting. His name is Byrd, like the Byrds, the band. B-Y-R-D.
Yeah, or Robert Byrd.
That is Robert Byrd. That is a glorious hoax created by a real weirdo in rural Missouri who for some reason utilizes the logo of the Thule Gesellschaft on the cover. You get neo-Nazis and Holocaust deniers furthering this narrative, which then begins to shift from Nazi UFOs to reptilians and greys in deep underground military bases as the Phil Schneider, Paul Benowitz, Dulce base mythos is cooked up by Air Force OSI. So the question is, what the fuck is going on here? Why are there seemingly post-war Nazi elements spreading disinfo about underground bases, basing it on earlier Hollow Earth stuff like Vril, but with a new twist? What's the possible perception management angle here? As a possible angle there, I was also struck by the similarities between Phil Schneider's space age story and ancient stories of Catabasis, where a perilous trip to the underworld is taken in order to rescue someone or obtain secret knowledge.
Yes, there's definitely an aspect to that, and I think that we kind of talked about this a little bit, or the sorry, I'm just addressing the second portion of the question. In our Blavatsky, or in a recent Reptoid episode, we talked about Blavatsky's fascination with underground complexes and tombs and things like that, and the association between this and the occult, and sometimes how serpent beings of various mythological strains are said to inhabit these things, and they've definitely been connected in that way with some of this mythos, and that I think definitely has a relationship with the Phil Schneider stuff. It will be interesting to go deeper into the Catabasis stuff, but maybe as to the first part of the question, yeah, I actually did read the secret diary of Admiral Byrd, who was a real person, but I don't necessarily think the secret diary was authored by him. The guy that they're referring to is the guy who did the sort of flight over the North Pole, or so he claimed. But it's disputed that he actually did reach the North Pole and South Pole by air, as he had claimed to do. But this sort of secret diary was disseminated, where basically, he gets there and he encounters these beings within the earth in Flugelrods, I believe, and they basically speak German, like these sort of masterful entities. pretty much like they're, and they're teaching him to sort of how to uplift his race, and they're giving him sort of warnings. So yeah, it's clearly sort of like Nazi aligned, wishful thinking, that there's this advanced Germanophone civilization living under the North Pole. So you can see how, like, this idea that I guess now people who are maybe anti-Nazi or concerned about, like, the deep state or whatever, thinking they're in league with Nazis and their evil secret bases, might subscribe to. There definitely were, there was a promotion of this by people who were partial to the Nazis. And whatever you think about the Hollow Earth stuff, it definitely is true that the Nazis did build, maybe not at the South Pole or the North Pole, but, they did build in South America, for instance, like secret underground bunkers and things like that to hide in the event of, having to escape Germany, etc. So, it's, in a way, like, that's a permutation of a certain reality. I'm trying to look up the Secret Diary now to see if I can find some choice quotes, because I definitely remember them talking about the Flugelrad, and he met with the master of these beings, and he talked to him about his concerns about the human race and things like that. But it's obviously going to be a little bit difficult to find on Google because it's shadow banned suppressed knowledge. It would be good to dig up a key quote. Yeah, it is interesting because I do also, on our recent episode about reptoids, which touched on the sort of deep underground military base stuff, there was this weird aspect of David Icke's recounting of his trip to the United States for like 15 key days, where like so many people were coming up to him and talking to him about these reptilians and these secret underground bases. It is unusual. It almost seems like there is some kind of like aspect of disinformation about these underground bases, or but maybe there is some kind of ritual component to it, or there's some sort of ritual aspect to this very circulation of these stories, and that like by spreading the belief or perpetuating this idea, even in Kathy O'Brien's sort of tale, however you appraise the reality of this, she kind of does raise the interesting idea of like the alien motif in the sort of holograms used by HW and his whole entourage of fellow Cabal members. It does sort of raise the question. David Icke's take is simply that, his explanation is simply that, well, they are reptilians, but it's interesting to consider if they're not reptilians, what is the motive for perpetuating this idea of reptilians, or of this sort of secret underground race. What's the sort of fascination with this? There might be something to it, in the same way that there's an appeal for Aquino, who we were just mentioning, to saying like, oh, I have this swastika of hair just like Crowley. Maybe there's a certain appeal to people who are invested in these types of ideas of the hidden civilizations and the Vril. Maybe there's a sort of duping delight or occulted meaning and sort of perpetuating these stories, kind of a winking aspect to it. It's possible.
I think I feel like that's a lot with
themselves in this way.
The post-war Nazi kind of mind war disinfo stuff. Like, it does feel a little bit like they're playing with us all, because whatever they're doing is buried well enough and protected by the right people that it's not really going to be discovered, whether it's UFOs or underground bases.
Yeah, I mean, you'd almost think that, like, all the stuff about... I mean, I guess it would be, assuming that there were no reptilians or secret underground bases, it would be sort of... Or if the bases were real, but the reptilians weren't, all the stuff about that would maybe... Although I guess maybe because of the air of ridicule around that stuff, maybe that would sort of shitcoat the entire thing. So that's one aspect. My initial thought was like, well, that would just create more suspicion rather than a full cover-up. But of course, we know that that's not really how these things work, and a lot of the time, this sort of misinformation or the disinfo clouds can sugarcoat the whole issue. Yeah.
When you have, Freemasons like Peter Lavenda running around, like, supposedly telling you the real story, I think maybe they could rest a little easy that, the real story is not actually going to get out.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on with those secret machines or the K is not going to be fully divulged, and they can let a little air out of the balloon with people like that, like Tom DeLonge and other things like that. But I mean, the Hollow Earth thing, it is like a lot of other things we've talked about in our like cryptid episodes. Like, it is a kind of a transcultural, transhistorical phenomenon that popped up in nearly every culture.
Right.
So,
and the idea of the Hollow Earth, I think, is in itself kind of arguably a misrepresentation, because, well, like, some people who might be described as being Hollow Earth people, or who might be concerned with the existence of deep underground military bases, or with secret races existing on the Earth even, or things like that, they might not necessarily believe that the Earth itself is, like, hollow, that the Earth is like a wonder ball or whatever, with like a sinusoid side, like they...
But that there's, like, tunnels.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Tunnels.
Which there are. Like, there are, like, vast cave systems. And caves, of course, have always had, like, a esoteric or sort of mystical significance. Think about like, the allegory of the cave. Exactly. Or the Seven Sleepers in the cave. So the cave
and dragons often dwelt in caves.
Yes, of course. Which I guess lots of big animals do. I guess they also, they dwell in hard to reach places like mountaintops, but caves also could be in mountaintops. They were obviously hermits might dwell in caves. There's cave
Bigfoot. I'm seeing here in the article here, just on Wikipedia. There's a lot of Bigfoot overlap with
the article on what
over the years. Hollow Earth.
Oh, Hollow Earth, yeah. He could live in caves, for sure.
Michael Grumley,
Giants,
who is
obviously.
Of course.
In Kandahar, that's why the U.S. government is going into the caves and blowing them up, is to get rid of the giants.
That's
yes.
Right. So who knows what's going on with I think we can assume that maybe there's a bit of fuckery, just like they're doing with UFOs.
Phil Schneider, I would like to do a full episode maybe on him, because he's very interesting. And his whole, like, background, like, he actually, like, his father was a Nazi, like, U-boat commander or something.
Really?
Yes.
Schneider, huh? Oh, wow.
And, but then he flipped, right?
Really?
Well,
he flipped to what? The U.S.?
The U.S., yeah.
Does that really count as flipping?
Sorry. Yeah, exactly.
No, you can keep your repugnant Nazi beliefs. Just come build rockets for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I did not know that about Phil Schneider. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, son of a Nazi.
Yes, exactly. He was a son of, like a U-boat commander or something. There's a documentary and a book called The Underground, which touches on Phil Schneider's story and some of his background and the connections to, like, the Philadelphia experiment and that type of stuff.
That's another very weird one that I've stumbled across many times over the years, and still not really sure what to make of it.
It's definitely a great story, and I think that's part of the reason for its enduring power. Maybe it does have some kind of mythical resonance, and that's why it's so it's proved so enduring. But I also think part of it is just this is such a spectacular story of going down and being attacked by this alien, or like having a beam burst out from the alien and getting wounded by it.
Definitely.
I'm trying to. What was his father's name? I think it might have been Edgar Schneider or something. No, that's not right. Trying to remember. Phil Schneider, father. What was his name? Yeah, I might have to read up on that at a later time. But I did find but he definitely was like a Nazi U-boat commander. I remember very clearly from the underground. I did find this diary, this of Admiral Byrd. For those who don't know it, it is interesting to read some of this. So it's like in the form of like a log of his time, So he says at 1,005 hours, or I guess 10:05 hours, I alter altitude 1,400 feet and execute a sharp left turn to better examine the valley below. It is green with either moss, so he's finding like a green valley at the North Pole. It should be covered in ice and snow, but no, it's a green valley. The light here seems different. I cannot see the sun anymore. We make another left turn and we spot what seems to be a large animal of some kind below us. It appears to be an elephant. No! It looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible. Yet there it is. Decrease altitude to 1,000 feet and take binoculars to better examine the animal. It is confirmed. It is definitely a mammoth-like animal. Report this to base camp. 10:30 hours. Encountering more rolling green hills now. The external temperature indicator reads 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Continuing on our heading now. Navigation instruments seem normal now. I am puzzled over their actions. Attempt to contact base camp. Radio is not functioning. 11:30 hours.
No.
Countryside below is more level and normal, if I may use that word. Ahead we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. Aircraft seems light and oddly buoyant. The controls refuse to respond. My God! Off our port and starboard wings are a strange type of aircraft. They are closing rapidly alongside. They are dish-shaped and have a radiant quality to them. They are close enough to see the markings on them. It is a type of swastika. This is fantastic.
No.
Where are we?
What
has happened?
What?
I took out the controls again. They will not respond. We are caught in an invisible vice grip of some type. Our radio crackles. This is at 11:35 hours. Our radio crackles and a voice comes through in English with perhaps a slight Nordic or Germanic accent. The message is, "Welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land you in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, Admiral. You are in good hands."
When was that allegedly written?
This was allegedly written in 1947. But when it was actually written, I don't quite know.
So after World War II, so he allegedly in 1947 had this. Where was he? Where this happened? The North Pole?
Yeah, it was the North Pole.
Okay. Did Admiral Byrd actually do an expedition over the North Pole?
He did, and he actually did discover some stuff up there, and it's disputed whether he actually reached it, although he claimed to. But I don't think that he ever said anything like this publicly. This is the secret diary that has been disseminated by who knows who. This is obviously
I see, and attributed to him.
Yes. So he
sounds like a Nazi psyop to me.
It's definitely definitely the person who wrote this was partial to the Nazi view of things.
The fact that an Anglo or American admiral would see a flying saucer with a huge swastika on it and be like, "Oh joy!"
I think in saying this is fantastic, it's funny in context for us to hear that, but I think that fantastic he meant this is of fantasy, this is fantastical.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't. But it was odd that he wasn't damn,
he didn't have a World War II flashback, he didn't have a PTSD flashback or something. Oh god.
Yeah.
I would be
eventually, but he gets an audience with the Master. He says it's a Buck Rogers setting. Was there even Buck Rogers at that time? Was Buck Rogers a thing in 1947 already?
It might have been a comic book or something, or something like that.
Guess,
I don't know if it
true.
was a TV show yet.
It did exist earlier. But anyway, so a voice greeted him in a cordial manner, and then he saw a man with delicate features and with the etching of years upon his face. He was seated at a long table. He motions to me to sit down in one of the chairs. After I am seated, he places his fingertips together and smiles. He speaks softly again and conveys the following. We have let you enter here because you are of noble character and well known in the surface world, Admiral. Surface world? I half gasped under my breath. Yes, the Master replies with a smile. You are in the domain of the Ariani. Aryan knee, the inner worlds of the earth. We shall not long delay your mission, and you will be safely escorted back to the surface for a distance beyond. But now, Admiral, I shall tell you why you have been summoned here. Our interest rightly begins just after your race exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. It was at that alarming time we sent our flying machines, the Flugelrods, to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. That is, of course, past history now, my dear Admiral, but I must continue on. You see, we have never interfered in your race's wars and barbarity, but now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for man, namely that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the powers of your world, and yet they do not heed. Now you have been chosen to be witness here that our world does exist. You see, our culture and science is many thousand years beyond your race, Admiral. But what does this have to do with me, sir? I interrupted. The Master's eyes seemed to penetrate deeply into my mind, and after studying me for a few moments, he replied, Your race has now reached the point of no return, for there are those among you who would destroy your very world rather than relinquish their power as they know it. In 1945 and afterwards, we tried to contact your race, but our efforts were met with hostility. Our Flugelrads were fired upon. Ooh. Yes, even pursued with malice and animosity by your fighter planes, all because they had swastikas on them. No, he didn't say that, but like...
try flying into Soviet airspace with a huge swastika.
He said, So now I say to you, my son, there is a great storm gathering in your world, a black fury that will not spend itself for many years. There will be no answer in your arms. There will be no safety in your science. A storm is coming. This is the original storm.
Really?
It may rage on until every flower of your culture is trampled and all human things are leveled in vast chaos. Your recent war is only a prelude of what is to come for your race. We see it here more clearly with each hour. Do you say I am mistaken? No, I answer. It happened once before. The Dark Ages came and they lasted more than 500 years. Yes, my son, replied the Master. The Dark Ages that will come now for your race will cover the earth like a pall. But I believe that some of your race will live through the storm. Beyond that, I cannot say. So he had to return to the service world with this message. Yes, and the last thing that they said, a radio message came through as he was being escorted out of this paradise, and they said, we are leaving you now, Admiral. Your controls are free. Auf Wiedersehen. So, yes, they speak German. They fly Flugelrods with Nazis on them. With swastikas
Are they like genetically linked to German people though, or did the Germans okay, wow, I guess
Well, it seems like they're the master race, and exactly. I mean, come on.
I don't know what that.
They didn't interfere in any of our wars, but
well, maybe in our lifetime when
they're basically the peaceful Nazis that if the Nazis
they broke the sword.
But exactly. Been more in touch with like their true nature, like the true nature of the Aryan knees that were inside the earth. Then they would have broken the sword. But they,
and not mass mainlining crystal meth for like 13 years, and killing like 20% of Europe.
Exactly.
That little flaw there,
I mean, they might have. It seemed like the Ariani and the Earth, like they were sad, like over the outcome of the war, because like the enlightened Nazis, like who obviously like knew more about the advancements of civilization, would have won, but they're like too sophisticated and too advanced to do anything. I mean, they tried to make overtures, but for some reason, the barbaric fighter planes, fired upon their peaceful Flugelrods. So, what can you do?
What can you do? But
so I don't know who
hold on to my suspicion about that whole thing.
Yeah.
Does that mean that when climate change melts the polar ice caps, probably like late into our lifetimes, that the Nazi bases in are going to be like open for business up in the North Pole? Are they going to have to come out and reveal themselves?
I guess.
I guess we just have to wait 60 years and we'll see.
Yes.
Cool.
The catabasis link is very interesting. I mean, it literally is like a catabasis, like a down going that Phil Schneider goes on, and this also is like a catabasis narrative, where but it's also in a way sort of like a what would you call it, like an abyssus, where he's instead of a catabasis, it's an anabasis, maybe like a going up, or maybe anabasis is going across. It would be what it expedition up from. It works anyway. But
I'll take your word
it's
for
half,
it.
It's half catabasis, half anabasis. As above, so below, blah blah. But it's a very familiar narrative, and obviously like it's something that is these spiritual ascension or dissension narratives have a lot of appeal, like for these sort of real people or people
for
in
sure.
the cool world. So
is this what Cantbot meant when he said that like Trump is going to raise Thule up again from the Hollow Earth?
Yes, I think so.
Cool.
But as we know, Trump talked to the former Israeli like defense minister or whatever told us. Trump tried to do that, but the aliens stopped him.
Yeah, the Galactic Federation stopped him.
Yeah, the Galactic Federation.
I do think it's an interesting inversion of the common theme that, UFOs came to visit us after we detonated or we started dropping atomic bombs on each other. It kind of does make a little bit more logical sense that they were hanging out underground and they felt the seismic impact maybe of, I don't know, maybe they have technology that can read radioactivity or something. Seems like you would notice it more.
Well, it makes equal sense either way, honestly. Like,
in that, like, there's not really evidence for either, except it's a coincidence of the phenomenon exploding
from space.
That's true.
I think maybe we can go into this in our next question, but I feel like sometimes, like, it gets into the idea that, like, UFOs are, like, liminal phenomena in a way, and I think that, or they're phenomena that has, like, extra dimensional or, like, a sort of phenomenal existence, they're, I think that the way that they manifest, the way these phenomena manifest is in some way draws upon what people bring to the experience. So when if in your repertoire is like an airship captain or whatever, then you're gonna encounter that. It's like these sort of jinn that are manifesting themselves, and part of the way they manifest is according to like some of the resources or what other what the witnesser brings to the experience. So I think that's really the reason why UFOs as such, or flying saucers as such, exploded at that time, because that's what people expected to see, because that is like an image that was of cultural salience at that time, whereas prior to that, this phenomena had manifested like in a slightly different language, even though like maybe you could say it's the same phenomenon.
The flying chariots, airships, like all that kind of stuff. Okay. Well,
yes, and I think that you could say similar things to like these cults that maybe interact with such beings, like that maybe go into the earth to do these types of rituals that use caves and caverns in the ground as ritual sites. The symbology of their religions may have been different. That may have transformed from a language of Nagas or other types of beings, or hyper advanced Aryans or forebears in the earth, to different terminology, or slightly different terminology. But yeah, I do like the most interesting aspect of this is the sort of disinfo angle to it, because like what is the function of Phil Schneider? Like, why disseminate these stories just to shitcoat like the reality of some underground bases that may exist, like make it seem crazy to be intrigued by them? I don't know. Like,
definitely
or does
a possibility.
there have some kind of ritual function to it, where like the storytelling is part of this act? We talked about like the sort of Homeric, stories of catabasis and things like that. There's obviously some kind of, at least partially, socio-religious function to telling epics and things like that. So maybe disseminating these stories has some function like that. But yeah, we'll also a topic we'll revisit. So yeah,
absolutely.
But it's an interesting question. So yeah, looking forward to reading the book that Good Flying Wren is working on. So
definitely, definitely.
When the book comes out, maybe we can have you on to discuss it if it encompasses these themes. We'll see. But anyway, good luck on that. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm quickly that it was Oscar Schneider who was Phil Schneider's father, and he was a Nazi U-boat captain, and he was repatriated to U.S. Naval Intelligence, or I don't know if repatriated is the right word, but. Yeah, he moved into U.S. Naval Intelligence.
Holy shit.
And,
so real strong paperclip vibes there.
Yes, according to Phil Schneider, he was involved in the Philadelphia experiment, like the famous, disappearing ship thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Yeah. Like,
I've definitely heard of it.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty famous. I just wasn't sure, how generally famous it was, or how, much it's in the paranormal universe. But
I feel like there were History Channel shows on it back in the day.
Yeah, I feel like I have seen History Channel shows, and I think there was a movie made out of it too.
There was,
called The Philadelphia Experiment. Yeah. But anyway, so this dude, Oscar Schneider, apparently, was, involved in developing, nuclear submarines and things like that. I mean, Phil Schneider, I don't know how much of this is true, but, I mean, it's hard to really say, but he ascribed all sorts of things to him, including a time variance formula.
Mm-hmm.
And he described, Enochian implants. Or maybe Enochian inscribed implants that were recovered from people that during the Philadelphia experiment. These implants came out of them.
I never heard that part before.
Yeah, I think that's something that they emphasize, that Phil Schneider and the people around him. He wrote out his dad's time variance formula in some of these documents. There's one ascribed to his father talking about the USS Phariseth, which was the ship that, famously was involved. I mean, it is interesting that Phil Schneider, committed suicide under nebulous circumstances, and the guy who broke the Philadelphia experiment committed suicide under suspicious circumstances, and... there's all these sort of people in that general orbit who have died under it makes you wonder, I definitely could see that there's some disinfo angle here. I mean, the Nazi connection, the very paperclippy, as you said.
Yes, that really jumps out. I would like to do a deeper dive into the Philadelphia experiment and Schneider and all that stuff. Yeah, because I'd like to see to what extent is there corroboration of any kind of it, and I don't know, just getting the whole thing.
And Paul Benowitz, who a Good Flying Wren also mentioned, I guess Richard Doty claimed that he was feeding false information to Benowitz.
Exactly. That was a big part of the Mirage Men documentary. It was Paul Benowitz's descent, kind of breakdown as a result of Richard Doty psyoping him.
Yeah, there was some other dude, William. Yeah, there was some other dude, William Moore, who said that he was involved in trying to make Paul Benowitz go insane. Yeah. Anyway,
Anyways,
I guess he was into the Dolce-based stuff. Yeah, we'll move on to
let's move on.
Number 11.
Yeah, we could go down a Phil Schneider rabbit hole for later.
We should definitely do that at some point, but we'll do it later. Okay, let's move.
Okay.
Let's progress to 11.
Fuck everything, I'm gone. Leave it alone. Every time I get so close and it all gets blown. Don't play alone. Everybody think they know, but they all just clones. Marching alone. Really wanna give my skull a brand new home. But I won't though. I don't wanna get no blow to my grandma flow. But in my soul, one finger plane and the other one inferno. Messy, yo, I can be messing no others and that's about so below. These damn bitch don't know what damn thing said what so. I can better tell a friend for foe. All that I know is I don't know where to call home, where to go, know how to get snow. In a safe place, I'm in it, yo. Still when I cut to the play, let's go. I hate everything, I hate everything. We are not the same, I can feel no pain. I hate everything, I hate everything. We are not the same, I can feel no pain. I wake up in the morning feeling like I'm John D. Got my black magic book and drew a circle round me. Bitch, I wake up in the morning feeling like I'm not me. I'm a beast, I'm a killer, I'm a young rowdy. Bitch, I wake up in the morning feeling like I'm John D. Got my black magic book and drew a circle round me. Bitch, I wake up in the morning feeling like I'm not me. I'm a beast, I'm a killer, I'm a young
you want to read that?
Yeah, I'll read that one, yeah. Wondering what you guys think about John Dee and Edward Kelly and the language of the angels. Interested in John Dee maybe being a spy / his sign-off being 007 / setting up MI6 in a way. Well, as to the last part, I don't know. I think that the whole... for one, I don't think that his sign-off was 007. I think that that's, like, not true. I don't know who first perpetuated that idea. I think that he used a bunch of weird glyphs or swirls to sign his name that could be interpreted, like, if you squint, as being 007, but I think that there was, like, a more conventional reason why, where Ian Fleming got that idea. Was he a spy? Like, yeah, was John Dee a spy? Like, I mean, he certainly was, like, very in with Queen Elizabeth, so in that way, he was, like, a diplomat and, like, a, figure, and he was certainly, like, thought of as spying, by some,
For sure.
and he traveled widely, but, I mean, so insofar as he probably reported the results of his travels, and he probably represented the interests of the Queen, I think that someone like Christopher Marlowe was, like, more of, like, a, a Bond-type spy, like, it'd be a more plausible Bond-type spy, not to say that he truly was, like, really like James Bond, but still, like,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that maybe a more accurate term would be sort of like intelligence operative for
you could call him
British Empire.
Well, he was certainly an intelligence operative, and one of the main sources of intelligence were his angel conversations. Magical work that he would be doing would be an important source of intel. Like, and that was at the time, like, widely believed to be, like, a legitimate form of, like, geostrategy, and a highly sought after resource was the contact with the occult world.
And the language of the angels, I'm like familiar broadly with John Dee, but I'm not well versed in many of the specifics. So the language of the angels refers to his contact with angels.
The language of the angels that he's probably referring to is the Enochian language.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so that was Edward Kelly was like this interesting, like, magical figure who John Dee was very much in with, and he was like a scryer, basically, and he helped him to sort of carry out these conversations with angels. Actually, for those in the grotto, a good flying Wren recently posted his show stone setup, or, like, his John Dee sort of magic owl setup. I don't know if you go through the grotto, you have to scroll back a bit to see it, but a sort of modern day version of this was posted. Basically, what they would use for this would be basically a crystal ball that they called the show stone. So Dee and his scryer, through the sort of mediary of him, Kelly would give voice to the messages of the angels while they were looking into these show stones, so that would sort of produce these important messages, and the visions of the angel would appear in this kind of crystal ball that they were looking into. So, I think the device of the show stone is very interesting because that kind of shows how, and you can see this idea of the crystal ball, like, in contemporary plays and things like that, especially in travel literature. The idea of the crystal ball, like, is very salient and often is used to kind of collapse distances or allow characters to communicate across significant differences. So it's really like they kind of had this imagination of like phones or whatever, of our phones or
like a
our
Palantir,
ability to Skype.
basically.
Yeah, it's basically like the Palantir is is Tolkien's sort of name for a crystal ball. And so they sort of saw this, or in the Wizard of Oz, they saw this crystal ball. But obviously that has a historical precedent or something that was an idea that had circulated like in actual medieval and Renaissance times. So this is something that had a lot of salience for Elizabethans. They really were fascinated by the idea of the crystal ball, and it's the way that they would think of using it a lot of the time was similar to how we would use phones, like that they would allow you to communicate over great distances. But in addition to that, you could also talk to spirits and angels.
Which, I mean, I don't know, today, like on the internet, like, you could be talking to a bot.
True,
Is it a daemon? I don't know.
Daemon. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, of course, we've talked, I think, in the past about I think we did recently on our spirit photography episode, like this sort of occult dimension that inhabits a lot of our technology. The idea of their computers as being somehow haunted. This is still like a fascination that these can be conduits of contact with these other realities. There's an article that I really like that goes into this called Shows in the Showstone, A Theater of Alchemy and Apocalypse and the Angel Conversations of John Dee, which was published in Renaissance Quarterly in the mid-90s. It's by Deborah E. Harkins, with 2 S's, interestingly. Or maybe it's Harkness, and they just spelled her name wrong. Yeah, it's Harkness. This is a interesting article that talks about John Dee and Edward Kelly. I'll just read some of it here. So on November 16th, 1582, John Dee and his assistant Edward Kelly gathered in the study of Dee's home in Mortlake, a small town located southwest of London on the River Thames. It was 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and the latest in a series of dramatic events was unfolding. This event, like the events that preceded it and those that followed, involved an extraordinary cast of characters and contained a significant philosophical message. In Mortlake, England's most important natural philosopher was preparing to engage in what was becoming a habitual exercise, conversing with angels, whom Dee referred to as his skullmasters, about matters relevant to his study of the natural and supernatural worlds. Like all dramatic events, the conversations required advanced preparation, in this case ensuring a degree of privacy in Dee's busy household and arranging a crystal showstone on a table by the window, where it could catch the natural light as it entered the room. Once the physical environment was prepared, Dee and Kelly began to prepare themselves with prayers for divine guidance. They had not waited long when Edward Kelly reported to Dee that a male angel had appeared in the stone dressed in a long purple robe with a triple crown on his head. The angel brandished a red rod, and the earth below him shook. 7 other angels approached him, and the 7 angels held a 7-pointed star made of copper. The first angel spoke to Dee with Kelly's assistance, saying, "I am he which have the power to alter the corruption of nature. With my seal, I seal her, and she is become perfect. I prevail in metals, in the knowledge of them." So, once again, the metallic knowledge and the occult significance of this is coming through, as we've talked about so often. Another angel came forward and told Dee, "I am Prince of the Seas. My power is upon the Watts. I drowned Pharaoh. My name was known to Moises." I'm just doing a phonetic version of the spelling here.
Yeah.
"I lived in Israel. Behold the time of God's visitation." After prophecies about the destructive power of the sea, the angel opened his robe, revealing feathers and a golden girdle. At this point, the angel took his hand from the 7-pointed star, and Kelly described how a black cloth was drawn inside the stone, which Dee noted is now appointed to be our token, that we must leave off for that instant. Yes, I guess the 7-pointed star was the token that they received. So after a brief intermission, Dee and Kelly resumed their conversation with the crowned angel and the 3 angels who still held the star. One of the 3 stepped forward, saying, "My power is in the earth. I keep the bodies of the dead. Their members are in my books. I have the key of dissolution. Behold, the bowels of the earth are at my opening. D, who was feeling some financial pressure at the time, asked the angel for help finding hidden treasure so that he could pay his debts. The angel of the earth chastised D for his request, replying that the treasures hoarded in the earth were reserved for the destruction of the Antichrist. Instead of worldly treasures, the angel was giving the natural philosopher the power of his seal, which D would be able to use to govern the earth and unlock the earth's secrets. Another angel stepped forward, who was the life and breath of all things and living creatures. This angel made birds, dragons, and other creatures appear in the stone and said, "The living, the end, and the beginning of these things are well known unto me, and by sufferance I do dispose them until my veil be run." At this point, the angel took out a vial that contained 5 or 6 spoonfuls of oil. So subsequently, there's a 6th angel that pulled open his clothes, which were red and fire, that scarcely of man's eye can be beholden, and that burst from his sides. Finally, the 7th angel spoke to D and Kelly, saying, "The powers under my subjection are invisible. I will teach thee the names without numbers. The creatures subject unto me shall be known to you. Beware of wavering. Blot out suspicion of us, for we are God's creatures that have reigned, do reign, and shall reign forever. All our mysteries shall be known unto you." The conversation ended with some final words from the 1st angel. "Behold, these things and their mysteries shall be known unto you, preserving the secrets of him which reigneth forever, whose name is great forever. Open your eyes, and you shall see from the highest to the lowest." At last, the black curtain was drawn on the stone, and the conversation concluded. So, the whole thing of the black curtain, an interesting point of this article is that the symbolic language of these visions in the stone were very similar to Elizabethan theater, that they were very much alike to, especially Corpus Christi plays. Actually, there's another dude who wrote a play. What was his name? I want to say that I think it was William Percy. He wrote a play called Mohammed and His Heaven, or Arabia Sitiens, which is basically kind of like a Corpus Christi play, but also like a satire of Islam and of Muhammad. And it has a very similar language to these angel conversations. But so you can sort of see in this that the earlier idea that we mentioned, or around how the language that's available to people, or the visual repertoire that people have at their disposal, is the way that sometimes these phenomena manifest. I mean, assuming that these things are in any way genuine, or if not, obviously it's the limit of their imaginations, and they're just coming up with what they can, they're just imagining things in terms of the theater that they've seen. But, that's an obvious explanation that comes to mind. But also, the other explanation of, in order to imagine it as something that has a real phenomenal reality. I mean, obviously, D believed in it. I mean, a common explanation is that Kelly was, deceiving him, and, egging him on to see these things, or saying what was said. People have done analyses of the Enochian languages and found that it doesn't really have a unique grammar, and that it's basically English,
speaking in tongues, basically.
Kind of. It has elements of speaking in tongues, and it has elements of just being a bad conlang, where it's not its own grammar. I mean, it's supposed to be what Enochian is supposed to be, is the most ancient form of Hebrew. And Hebrew is a degraded form of Enochian. But, if you actually look at the grammar of Enochian, it's not really, insofar as it can be reconstructed, it's not really Semitic. So, that's, some...
it has no coherent kind of, no coherent root in any known language, which would make you think, that's what I meant by speaking in tongues. Not so much the style of it, but just the fact that people are clearly just saying shamana, mamada, babada, and it's not word. You know what I mean?
Well, sometimes it would be shamana, mamada, babada. Sometimes it actually would just straight up be like that, and sometimes it would be kind of someone who only spoke English, what their imagination of another language would be. Not that he didn't know other languages, but obviously there's some element of Latin in Enochian, and there's a Hebrew influence on the characters for sure. But in terms of whether this really like, you know, was a functional language. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that it couldn't be a conduit for communication with other realities or within oneself, you know, in core of nerve or whatever. But
in core of nerve. Exactly.
It's but it's interesting, like, how much like curtains feature in these things, and how you know, the visions are set in places like roads, meadows, forests, mountains, streets, marketplaces, great halls, you know, the standard settings of like the Elizabethan theater. And it's
interesting.
It's an interesting connection between these sort of, you know, this occult world of visions and the world of media, and the sort of inherent theatricality of it. Kind of goes back to the earlier question, well, way back in our first part, where someone asked, you know, is there have you ever had an abstract or a non-abstract or undeniable experience with shaitan or with jinn? And I think that really, in a way, part of the nature of jinn is that there always, and of angels and of shaitan, is that there always will be like an abstract or deniable aspect of one's experience with it, you know, like the
for sure. So them's the rules, it seems. I don't know why, but
well, that's just like how those concepts are kind of it's kind of like how those concepts are defined in a way, you know, like it's sort of like saying like, oh, well, you know, can you one might say that like, oh, can you see, like, if you think of a jinn as being like a liminal being, if you ask, like, oh, well, can you see a jinn in a way that isn't abstract? Can you experience a jinn in a way that isn't abstract or deniable? Like, you know, or experience a gray or something, like, you know, any of these creatures that we could put under the umbrella of jinn, you know? That's kind of like asking, like, you know, well, who made God or whatever? Like, God, by definition, is, like, the uncreated creator, you know? So then what you're talking about ceases to be God. So in a way, like, part of the way that these things are defined is that there is this aspect to them where they exist like in some sort of parallel space that is a little bit outside the ability of like our standard scientific powers to define. You could say, you know, maybe you hold out hope that we'll be one day able to like put the jinn under a microscope or something, but that's definitely you know, one paradigm or one lens through which to consider these things, is that their nature is one that's kind of outside that. Kind of how Merleau-Ponty talks about like the art or our experience as embodied beings, you know, and certain things can't be understood out from like, you know, this sort of ideal in this ideal sense, or as if we didn't have bodies, you know. Some of them some things can only be experienced in a bodied way, so and some of these things are is part and parcel the sort of the mystery of them, the you know, the elusiveness and their liminal quality. But it is and in a way like the angel conversations like deal with something that was really common in especially early modern science, which was like the idea of like a symbology and the power of symbology to change the world, which is something that I think people are less sensitive to now, and I think that maybe the point that was raised by Peter Leventa himself, I think in S.K. Bain's book, that like we've lost our consciousness of symbology, or we've become symbologically illiterate. You know, I think there's there's like
or it's been sublimated and kind of like it's been channeled through other things, because I feel like symbols do play symbology still plays like a very powerful role in our very like audiovisual culture, but it's been sort of like subsumed into like market forces, and I don't know, it's like it's not taken seriously by like you know, scientists in the same way anymore. So it's operating in a almost more necessarily occulted way, because I mean maybe it is operating in like the quasi pseudoscience of like advertising and public relations, but in those, and you know, in mass media entertainment, like in all those things, like there is a certain appreciation for symbolic content, basically, or like highly charged symbols and or you know, ritualized symbols, things like that. But it's kind of been segregated from like science proper, unless you're kind of talking about, I don't know, some kind of very inside baseball psychological research that gets like co-opted by the advertising industry.
Yeah, maybe. I think that maybe a psychology is like where people might consider symbols to have meaning, but not like in an archetypal way. I wouldn't even think that.
I guess you're right. Whereas, we've instrumentalized it and secularized it basically. So it's like, these symbols do represent things, but there's just like evolutionary reasons for that, and so you can kind of like tweak.
Yeah, or the idea of
the monkey's
symbols
brain.
the idea of symbols having meaning in themselves, which I think is definitely something that John Dee would have believed in. That like certain sigils or whatever. And most natural magicians would. The idea that certain sigils, certain names, things like that would have inherent power, whereas, like, a modern psychologist might think, like, something that suggests sex to someone will have power because it suggests sex to them.
The mechanism is somewhat different.
But if it didn't, then, it would, and it's in their mind, it's a mental thing. And I mean, obviously the world of the mental is like very important, but I think that, again, I feel like we talked about this a little bit before, but I feel like there's a convergence between the mental world and the ontological world, this whole separation between our perceptions and how we see things versus how things really are. Isn't like a straight division, but
it's not easy to disentangle.
No, it's not. And I think that in these angel conversations, you can really these play out in this very potent symbology, and a lot of the time the angels are giving signs to John Dee as a way to exercise their powers, or as a form of the Philosopher's Stone. That's an interesting thing, because especially with the connection to media and the way that these sort of symbolism works, I think that it's a very interesting site to explore in terms of that connection. Because you can see how these things, obviously Queen Elizabeth, Elizabethan times. This is a period of explosion, both in what John Dee was doing, and also like it's obviously a famous time of Renaissance and the English sort of self-imagination of its cultural dominance. This is a time of Shakespeare, right? So and that's kind of like a British imperial meme in a way, like Shakespeare's brilliance and like his world historical significance and power and his mastery of the human mind. I even saw someone like Harold Bloom or whatever wrote some book saying that Shakespeare invented humanity and taught us to have like an interior life, and before that like we hadn't, or whatever, which is like really talk about like occultic, so there's so I think that and I mean, in a way, this was kind of gotten up to compete with people like Racine or Lope de Vega, other significant playwrights in other countries. They wanted to have their own version of that, and he became the biggest playwright in the world, of course, because like the British Empire, surpassed the French and the Spanish empires.
Exported it.
Ultimately, the whole Shakespeare, if you look at the lineage of the theater and the special effects and all that stuff, it goes right now to like our modern sort of mediascape and the sort of same magical language that is moving between those two worlds. I think it's still like very salient today. But John Dee, Edward Kelly, super interesting.
Super interesting. We'll they're on the list to come back to.
They're definitely on the list. I want to definitely do an episode soon about like natural magic in like the early modern period, on some subject like that, like pick some grimoire to discuss or a thing like that. But
Okay, so we have an 11B on this question, which I will read from Dudu Darian.
Okay.
And he also asked, also interested in y'all's opinions on the Book of Judas. I believe he's referring to the Gospel of Judas, which is one of the Gnostic Gospels. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I
the Gospel of Judas. Like.
Yeah.
Well, the sort of alternative takes on Judas are closer to the Muslim view than the Orthodox Christian view is often.
What is the Muslim view of Judas?
Some of the Gnostic stuff is kind of weird. Well, there isn't like a straight up Muslim view of Judas, and there's a lot of like dissent around what actually like happened to Jesus, like especially now, because the more that Islamic beliefs in the modern era have seen efforts to at standardization or creating like a real shored up orthodoxy, oftentimes against like the very present challenge of Western Christianity. Muslims have drifted more and more away from the idea of affirming the crucifixion. So what the Quran says is that Jesus wasn't crucified, basically. That they didn't kill him and they didn't crucify him. So some Muslims take that to mean that Jesus, wasn't put up on the cross. Although the Quran does say that that's how it appeared. It was made to appear that way to them. So some people have taken this to mean that there was some kind of illusion that happened. Which is one explanation. And there's also the idea like that, the somewhat simpler idea that he was crucified, which maybe is closer to the Christian conception in some way. I think this is what Tabari says, or at least offers in his tafsir as an idea to Tabari, the sort of famous mufassir and historian. He said that he died in the dunya, but like not really, that he in saying that he wasn't crucified or killed. What they meant was that it was not in like his true reality, that he died in the dunya, but like not really. But many Muslims, do think that there was some kind of trickery involved, and that like as a result of this, so Jesus was never actually crucified at all. And so that gives rise to like a bunch of different ideas that like Jesus had travels after his supposed death and like went to other places, or that and one version of that is that Judas actually took his place on the cross, and it seems that it was Jesus, but it actually was Judas, and that can be taken in multiple different ways. Some people have said, I think Simon also someone who he switched with, or that he had a brother who switched with him, who may have been named
James, brother of Jesus. That's often referenced in the Gospels. which people have thought like, is that like, did Mary and Joseph have another kid? Did he have a twin? Like, what's going on here?
Maybe that's
It's very, but that actually gets at something interesting about the Gospel of Judas, because it sounds very similar. What you just described sounds very similar to both the content of this gospel and also the one representation of Jesus' life in cinema that is probably the closest to some of the Gnostic ones, which is The Last Temptation of Christ, Martin Scorsese's film from the 80s. And actually, that's a huge plot point in it, where Jesus is, he enters this kind of like, he almost goes into this sort of like transdimensional shift when he's on the cross. And then this little girl, who's supposed to be maybe like the Archangel Michael, tells him he can get down, and like the world is going to see him get crucified, but God isn't actually going to make him get crucified. He's going to take him down, and then he's allowed to like live his life and like have a baby with with Mary Magdalene, and just live like a normal man's existence.
I didn't remember
but of course,
that people thought he was crucified. I thought that he like got out of it, and that was sort of why things kind of went bad in that reality.
Well, because ultimately the little girl is not the Archangel Michael, but is actually Shaitan, and actually like psyoped him into not getting crucified. And at the very end, you have Judas coming in, and this is the other big similarity to the Gospel of Judas, where basically the big reversal is that like Judas is actually the best disciple. Contrary to the normal story, he was actually like the most enlightened and the most loyal, and Jesus basically asks him to turn him in to make the crucifixion happen, to like fulfill the prophecy, etc. And so that, you know, there's that great scene at the end where like our old man Harvey Keitel comes in and like discovers old Jesus when the Romans are burning down Jerusalem, and is like, you know, liar. Like, you were supposed, you had one job. You were supposed to die on the cross, you know, like that, and starts yelling at him, and basically says like, you know, which implies that everyone believed. He also meets Paul, played by Harry Dean Stanton, at one point. He's like preaching about Jesus, and Paul says, you know, he tries to say like, I think he tries to tell him like, I'm Jesus, and like it didn't happen. I didn't get crucified, and Paul says something like, you know, I don't care. Like, my Jesus did get crucified, and like I'll kill you again if like you get in my way, you know. Like, I don't care who you are, you know, because the Jesus I believe in. So there's like a lot of, I mean, this is all based on a Greek novel by Nikos Kazantzakis, which I feel like came out in either like the 50s or the 60s. So it actually came out before the Gospel of Judas was rediscovered in a market in Geneva, Switzerland in 1983. I guess a Yale PhD student stumbled across it. And so, I mean, that's the basic thrust of the Gospel of Judas. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, that The Last Temptation of Christ has always been like probably my favorite Jesus movie. Mm-hmm. I think hands down, it's got
one of the best. Yeah.
It really grapples, I think, with a lot of things that the other ones just, even like Pasolini's like Gospel According to Matthew, kind of beautiful, but like I don't know. It got pitched to me as this like radical Marxist reinterpretation, but all it was just like not an airbrushed blonde Jesus. It was just like actually people that looked like Palestinians like 2,000 years ago. So it's like, I don't know.
Except
it didn't really do it for me.
Just straight up doing like, you know, a Harvey Keitel voice. But other than that,
I mean, I was talking about the Gospel According to Matthew, but Harvey Keitel.
Oh, sorry,
That was like more like, I guess, realistic in a way, but it doesn't hit on the wild themes as much, where like, you know, it just has these little things in it where like, you know, these kind of Gnostic ideas, and I feel like it's much it's got this like crazy kinetic style, and takes also like, it takes the religion of it very seriously, even the very bizarre kind of liminal parts of it, like, you know, when he pulls his own heart out in front of all the disciples, and you know, goes to the desert and like talks to the lion who's Satan, and all these other things, and these dynamics where that's like cool. Judas is like a hardcore like Judean tanky, basically. He's like a zealot. Mm-hmm. He's like an assassin for the zealots, and you know, I think at one point he even says like, if you stray this far from the path of revolution, I'll kill you myself, you know, and shit like that. So it's got like a much more like live wire kind of energy to it, and more mystical, I know you hate that word, but kind of energy that I don't know, it's like I've always found it kind of compelling, even though it was like picketed when it came out. It was like seen as blasphemous because like he has sex with Mary Magdalene, but it was all that was just a fever dream by Shaitan, so it doesn't really count as whatever. No, I think the Gospel of Judas is interesting. I think a lot of these different alternative stories are interesting.
I think I think that a lot of the Gnostic stuff, I mean, the whole like idea of the inversion, it's similar to the kind of inversions that we talked about in the Gnostic material in again, the Reptoid episode, where we explored some of these things. But yeah, I think obviously it's interesting, and it's a compelling take, and I think that there are some like apocryphal or pseudonymous writings that are similar to this, like there's a Gospel of Barnabas that I think that the only surviving manuscripts are pretty late. Like, it's obviously, like, pseudepigraphical, but, you know, there might be an earlier work that it's based on, but, and that's straight up, like, you know, very, like, very Muslim, like, and he straight up, you know, says, like, I'm not the Messiah, and stuff like that, you know, like,
for sure, yeah.
You know, like, it says, like, there's gonna be another
spicy
prophet coming, whose name Muhammad, or like stuff like that, you know, like very like explicit. You know, Barnabas is the narrator of that. He says, Jesus weeping said, "O Barnabas, it is necessary that I should reveal to you great secrets, which after that I shall be departed from this world, you shall reveal to it." Then answered he that writes weeping, and said, "Suffer me to weep, O Master, and other men also, for that we are sinners. And you, that are a holy one and prophet of God, it is not fitting for you to weep so much." Jesus answered, "Believe me, Barnabas, that I cannot weep as much as I ought. For if men had not called me God, I should have seen God as he will be seen in paradise, and should have been safe not to fear the day of judgment. But God knows that I am innocent, because I never have harbored thought to be held more than a poor slave. No, I tell you that if I had not been called God, I should have been carried into paradise when I shall depart from the world, whereas now I shall not go thither until the judgment. Now you see I have cause to weep, if I have cause to weep. Sorry. Know, O Barnabas, that for this I must have great persecution, and shall be sold by one of my disciples for 30 pieces of money. Whereupon I am sure that he who shall sell me shall be slain in my name, for that God shall take me up from the earth, and shall change the appearance of the traitor, so that every one shall believe him to be me. Nevertheless, when he dies an evil death, I shall abide in that dishonor for a long time in the world. But when Muhammad shall come, the sacred messenger of God, that infamy shall be taken away. And this shall God do, because I have confessed the truth of the Messiah, who shall give me this reward, that I shall be known to be alive and be a stranger to that death of infamy."
Hold up.
Yeah,
wait.
Barnabas.
Wait. He says when the prophet Muhammad comes?
Yeah, well, it's from the Gospel of Barnabas, which, like, you know, is very pro-Islamic, you know.
When was the Gospel? But when was the Gospel?
Well, we
of Barnabas
don't know.
written?
The only manuscripts that we have are later. You know, they're much later, like the 16th and 17th centuries. You know, like that's when the manuscripts are from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say because a lot of these Gospels written in like the first and second and third centuries AD, like several hundred years before. Muhammad.
Yes. A lot of the Gnostic Gospels are. Yes,
that would be quite a coup to basically find a Gnostic Gospel predicting it. I mean, maybe
we did. There are a couple of things. There are a couple of things like that. The famous Paraclete, you know, in the Bible. Because Jesus talks about the arrival of a paraclete, which is like an advocate or something like that. He says in John 14, 15 to 14:27, Judas said, "But Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" Jesus replied, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. All this I have spoken while still with you. But the Advocate, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you."
Okay. That lines up. And I guess even the oral tradition, advocate makes me think of like an attorney in a courtroom, like speaking, and then somebody transmitted orally made the case, so to speak, a few hundred years later.
The intercessor. I mean, I think the Christian explanation of this is that it's the Holy Spirit. But what does that mean? Like, I don't get it. How will the Holy Spirit come? Because the Holy Spirit is amongst the disciples, and that's the idea. Not sure about that. Anyway.
Okay. Well, anyways, but
in the Gospel of I find some of that stuff like interesting. Yeah, and actually, there's a great did you know there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That sounds a little familiar. Maybe I
think I might have told you about this. I feel like I pitched you on a script about Jesus' life in Japan, because like years ago. Like, so Shingo Village is a location, and this is Wikipedia, of what is reported to be the last resting place of Jesus, located in the tomb of Jesus, Kirisuto no Haka, and the residence of Jesus' last descendants, the family of Sajiro Sawaguchi. According to the Sawaguchi family's claim, Jesus Christ did not die on the cross at Golgotha. Instead, his brother, Isukiri, took his place on the cross, while Jesus fled across Siberia to Mutsu province in northern Japan. Once in Japan, he changed his name to Torai Tora Dai Tenku and became a rice farmer, married a 20-year-old Japanese woman named Miyuko, and raised 3 daughters near what is now Shingo. While in Japan, it is asserted that he traveled, learned, and eventually died at the age of 106. His body was exposed on a hilltop for 4 years. According to the customs of the time, Jesus' bones were collected, bundled, and buried in the mound purported to be the grave of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
So it's a similar story where he had his brother, Isukiri, take his place. You know.
Wow. That is, and how long does that legend go back?
I don't know how long it goes back. Apparently, the claims, according to Wikipedia, another mound near the alleged grave of Jesus is said to contain an ear of the brother of Jesus and a lock from the hair of Mary, the only relics of his family Jesus could carry when he fled Judea. The claim started in 1933 after the discovery of supposed ancient Hebrew documents detailing Jesus' life and death in Japan that was supposedly the testament of Jesus. These documents are referred to as the Takeuchi documents, which are said to be ancient documents passed down to the family of Takeuchi Kiyomaro, the founder of a religious movement called Amatsukyo. The documents were allegedly seized by Japanese authorities and taken to Tokyo shortly before World War II during a crackdown on the Amatsukyo religion in 1935, and have not been seen since. Mysterious lost documents.
Okay. Wow.
So
okay.
Who knows?
That's I'd like to explore that a little more. That is fascinating. The last thing I want to say about the Gnostic Gospels that I think escaped us before. I'd forgotten about this because I took a class in college on I think it was called Early Christian Literature, and it was all about the Gnostic Gospels. And I'd forgotten this weird synchronicity that there's a very important missing gospel that basically was a common source for all of the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and also for a lot of the Gnostic gospels. But whatever the source was, it's been lost. We have no original document of it. But basically, biblical scholars have been able to kind of go back and do kind of forensic history of all of these documents and try to language analysis, different phrases or anecdotes that are in the gospels, and try to basically suss out the substance of this one. But the name they always gave it I'd totally forgotten until it just popped back into my head here, was the Q source, or the Gospel of Q.
Oh, yes, right.
It's the Q source. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's ironic because I feel like the Christian people that follow QAnon would not be super up on the academic debates around the early, or maybe they are, I don't actually know, or if even the discussion of a Q source is kind of irrelevant or even threatening, kind of you're trying to mess with the infallibility of the Bible by talking about this lost version of it that influenced all the others. But I just thought that is kind of interesting that you have this kind of pseudo, this Christian mysterious psyop figure on the internet that is sort of giving you the hidden gospel of Q. And if there's something to do with maybe the name was inspired by that to some degree, maybe not, but it is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They never found the Q source. They don't know what it is. They're still waiting for the storm to come, I suppose.
Well, Q evokes a question, so a mysterious aspect. I mean, why was it originally called Q? Why is it called the Q source? Because its identity was in question.
I believe I was assume that the Q source. It's from the German. I think it's Quell. Or Kel, Quelle, which means source.
Meaning source.
Well, Quell. So I guess that's really it. Just means source. It's part of the common material found in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, but not in the Gospel of Mark. So There's even a Q plus hypothesis. Remember that when people thought that like Q plus was like Trump himself, like posting on 8chan?
Oh right, yes, Q plus. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know, like what are we seeing going on here?
There's definitely like a lot of the Gnostic stuff is really interesting, and there is a lot of like I think that some of the Gnostic stuff is closer to like the Hawk than like the stuff at least in Orthodox Christian interpretations of the Gospels, the canonical Gospels. Some of it, not so much, but, I think that there's a lot of traditions that were being sorted out. Like, obviously, another prophet was required, but, there is, like, there's a lot of hack, like, on both sides, I think. I'm reading about, like, Jesus' substitution theories right now. Like, there's, a lot of the Gnostic texts that claim, like, Simon was crucified in the place of Jesus. Like, there was sort of different twinnings that happened, like the Book of Thomas, the Contender.
Yeah, the Book of Thomas is good. That one's got a lot of, like, ciphers, I think you could call them, where he just drops some, like, real heavy trips on his disciples. I think my favorite one was saying 13, where it's like after he's going on about, like, he says, this heaven will disappear, and the one above it will disappear too. Those who are dead aren't alive, and those who are living won't die. In the days when you ate what was dead, you made it alive. When you're in the light, what will you do? On the day when you were one, you became divided. When you become divided, what will you do? And then, like, later, he says to his disciples, if you were to compare me to someone, who would you say I'm like? Simon Peter said, you're like a just angel. Matthew said to him, you're like a wise philosopher. And then Thomas said to him, teacher, I'm completely unable to say whom you're like. Basically, it's like, I don't even know what's going on right now. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just, like, completely blown away. My mind is blown.
Well, that's Hawk, though. I think because his point is that, like, he can't compare, like, the idea is Jesus is God, astaghfirullah. So he's saying, I can't compare you to anything. So that's, closer to the hack,
that is a common,
like anything creation.
It does seem to be a common trend through most of the Gnostic Gospels that he is not doing the Gospel of John thing where he's like, I am literally God. Like, you know what I mean? Like all the other ones are much more kind of liminal and even the Gospel of Mark, which I believe is the earliest one, he's very cagey about calling himself God. Or even the Son of God. I think at one point somebody calls him the Son of God, and he's like, "Shut up! Don't say that about me." Like he's like, some people interpret that as he's kind of like embarrassed.
I don't think even in John, Jesus says like, "I am God." He might say like, "I am that I am" or something, but I don't think he even says in John, "I am God."
Well, he talks about how he's existed. He's existed since the beginning of time. Like, there's a lot more heavy. Well,
that's different from being God. The prophet Muhammad existed.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, whatever.
He was a prophet when Adam was water and clay. So his name is written on the throne.
He's always already happening. I get it.
Exactly. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's God. Obviously, like
I do remember from my Catholic school education and taking this class that they the Gospel of John rides.
They're like, well, if you read this, then it's clearly saying that Jesus is God. Just don't question it. It was when I took it in college, which was not a Catholic college. It was a secular class. They were saying that like this is where you really see the identification. Yeah, John is much more mystical and much more hardcore in that. Yeah, I definitely agree. But
it definitely centers the duality of Jesus as both man and God simultaneously, which is what the Catholic Church kind of ended up running with, basically. Whereas like it's not necessarily very clearly stated in the Gospel of Mark. It's a little bit more stated, but still somewhat more ambiguous in Matthew and Luke. And then John, which is the latest one. So John was written in like 120 or 140 AD or something like that. Whereas Mark was maybe written in like 75. something like that. So there might have been people that writing Mark who actually knew real disciples, whereas once you get to John, it's like you're probably maybe at least 2 or 3 generations down the line.
Right.
So and it's much more confident. It also has a lot more stuff calling it like it's the one that really talks about like then the Jews showed up and were like, we hate Jesus. You know, it's like got the most of that kind of stuff in it.
Like in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's like, you know, very mystical, very arcane, like hard to interpret, like what that actually really means. Like, you know, you can definitely get the idea Jesus is God from that for sure. But really, like outside of the pre-existing association between Jesus and the Word, like it doesn't really say that. Although, of course, you know, I get what you're saying. Like, you know,
my original point was that the Gnostic Gospels do not ride on that.
It's all distorted. It's all corrupted, etc.
These are just fragments of Coptic fragments of something that happened. Anyways, check out the Gnostic Gospels.
Yeah, I think that we read in an earlier episode the Gnostic Apocalypse of John, I believe. Where Jesus says, like, you know, he's like laughing, and there's like 2 Jesuses, like, you know, they like 2 Jesuses appear, and he like, you know, he's like, get out of here. Like, do you remember that one? I feel like I mentioned that in one episode. We
read a few of them. He laughs in the Gospel of Judas as well. He laughs at Judas out of kind of apropos of nothing, and then says something very, like, very trippy about how, like, the stars are going to fall from the sky or something. It's like, Master, why are you laughing at me? Jesus answered and said, I'm not laughing at you, but at the error of the stars, because these 6 stars go astray with these 5 warriors, and they'll all be destroyed along with their creations. It's just like he's just laughing about it, like, you know. Talking about how like he does say something very creepy here about Saklos. I forget what Saklos is, but he says that when Saklos completes the time span that's been determined for him, their first star will appear with the generations, and they'll finish what's been said. Then they'll sleep around in my name, murder their children, and they'll ... evil and ... the realms, bringing the generations and presenting them to Saklos. And after that, we'll bring the 12 tribes of Israel from ... and the generations will all serve Saklos, sinning in my name, and your star will rule. Yeah, and then your star will rule over the 13th realm. Saklos is I think it's some kind of spirit. It's an angel, who's associated with Yaldabaoth. He's talking about like the luminous cloud of light that no angel could ever see among all those who called God. Now the crowd of these immortals is called cosmos, that is perishable, by the Father and the 72 luminaries with the self-begotten and his 72 realms. That's where the first human appeared with his incorruptible powers. In the realm that appeared with his generation is the cloud of knowledge and the angel who's called Eleleth. After these things Eleleth said, let 12 angels come into being to rule over chaos and Hades. And look, from the cloud there appeared an angel whose face flashed with fire and whose likeness was defiled by blood. His name was Nebro, which means rebel. Others call him Yaldabaoth. And another angel, Saklos, and another angel, Saklos, came from the cloud too. So Nebro created 6 angels, and Saklos did too, to be assistants. They brought out 12 angels in the heavens, which each of them receiving a portion in the heavens. Then Saklos said to his angels, let's create a human being after the likeness and the image. And they fashioned Adam and his wife Eve, who in the cloud is called Life, because by this name all the generations seek him, and each of them calls her by their names. Now Saklos didn't command ... to give birth, except blank among the generations blank, which this blank, and the angel said to him, your life will last for a limited time with your children. Judas said to Jesus, how long can a person live? Jesus said, why are you amazed that the lifespans of Adam and his generation are limited in the place he's received his kingdom with his ruler? Judas said to Jesus, does the human spirit die? Jesus said, this is how it is. God commanded Michael to loan spirits to people so that they might serve. Then the Great One commanded Gabriel to give spirits to the great generation with no king, the spirit along with the soul. So the rest of the souls, blank, light, blank the chaos, blank seek the spirit within you, which you've made to live in this flesh from the angelic generations. Then God caused knowledge to be brought to Adam and those with him, so that the kings of chaos and Hades might not rule over them. Judas asks, what will these generations do? He says, the stars complete all these things. When Soklos completes the time span, basically what I just read, like the first star will appear, they'll finish what's been said, then they'll sleep around in my name, murder their children, they'll do evil and realms, and present them to Soklos, and they'll all serve Soklos, sinning in my name. And your star, Judas, will rule over the 13th realm. And that's when he starts laughing, and Judas says, Master, why are you laughing at me? And he said, I'm not laughing at you, but the heir of the stars, because these 6 stars go astray with these 5 warriors. They'll all be destroyed. I mean, truly,
it's
I
very
say
cinematic. I'm picturing it.
Truly, I say to you, Judas, those who offer sacrifices to Soklos blank everything that's evil, but you'll do more than all of them, because you'll sacrifice the human who bears me. Your horn has already been raised, your anger has been kindled, your star has ascended, and your heart has strayed. Truly I say to you, your last blank and the thrones of the realm have been defeated, the kings have grown weak, the angelic generations have grieved, and the evil they sowed is destroyed, and the ruler is wiped out. And then the fruit of the great generation of Adam will be exalted, because before heaven, earth, and the angels, that generation from the realms exists. Look, you've been told everything. Lift up your eyes and see the cloud with the light in it and the stars around it, and the star that leads the way is your star. Then Judas looked up and saw the luminous cloud, and he entered it. Those standing on the ground heard a voice in the cloud saying, the great generation and blank. And Judas didn't see Jesus anymore.
Wow.
Okay, so that's what Jesus told Judas about everything.
Wow.
Gotta watch out for Soklos.
You really gotta rock out for Soklos. Wow.
Sounds like a UFO. I don't know. There's just a lot.
Yeah, he definitely
Yaldabaoth, of course, makes an appearance. Yeah, so that's a new villain in the pantheon has been entered into the Gnostic.
For sure. Soklos is very worrisome.
He's somehow affiliated with Yaldabaoth, but he's running his own game, and he created humans. I don't know. It's all very confusing.
The ones that I was thinking of was the apocalypse, the Gnostic apocalypse of Peter, which is a bit much more straightforward. That's the one where Jesus, it's kind of a docetism, I believe is what it's called, or docetism, where it's like the dichotomy between Jesus's body and his spirit. And I think we talked about it. It's where Peter sees 2 Jesuses, and Peter sees Jesus being seized by the Roman guards, and he says, like, what do I see, O Lord? Is that you yourself whom they take, and that you are grasping me? Or is it this one, glad and laughing on the tree? And is it another one whose feet and hands they are striking? And Jesus replies, he whom you saw on the tree, glad and laughing, is the living Jesus. But this one whose hands and feet they drive nails into is his fleshy part, which is the substitute being put to shame, the one who came into being in his likeness, but look at him and me. So there's still this sort of doubling, the idea of like the 2 Jesuses being switched out.
Twin
I guess that idea
brothers,
isn't in the Gospel of Jesus. Yeah, in the Gospel of Jesus, it's not really like a substitution. Gospel of Judas, that is. It's not really a substitution, but the death of Jesus's body is a good thing because it sort of frees the spirit. That is the real Jesus in a way. Yeah, so it's this.
The human that bears me is what he referred
dichotomy.
to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's a
Thetan. Yeah, that same one. Yeah, and that same one he calls his body like a stony vessel, like an altar. It is of Elohim and law, and it is not, it's this harsh dichotomy, kind of invoking the Old Testament. The same thing of like Yaldabaoth being the evil god of the Old Testament. But anyway, very interesting. We are interested in this stuff as well tested, I think. Beware.
You never know when the Gnostic Gospels
Soklos.
will be relevant, but watch out for Soklos.
Beware Soklos.
I marvel at your wisdom, in nature's gifts abounding. I marvel at the simple and the absolute astounding. I see your deeds before me, and spread across the heavens. Yet man has fallen down too far. Why did he you abandon? Every day divided between darkness and the light, yet sunlit hearts and saintly souls have fallen to the night. Everywhere around me, your wisdom overflowing, yet as I look much closer, still demons coming, going. It's not that now I doubt you or sold my tattered soul. It's just that under every step, a deeper, darker hole. You made us in your likeness, then shame to all of you. For life on earth is but a curse, a sadly common view. I know you have your ways and means, and life is our own making. But why do you with all your might let children still be taken? Yes, let us each one suffer for all that we have done. But don't you think you could have helped us evil overcome? No longer can I bear it, the sin of humankind, from way before the birth of Christ to in the future blind. It's you I hold accountable. Your hosts have all retreated, for on their lips your words were still. Now history repeated. So now I stand before you and challenge you to show. No longer can you hide behind the myths that legend know. Come forth in all your glory, as mystics once had seen, to drive the evil from our hearts where goodness once had been.
Yeah, last one here. We're at 2 hours and 30 minutes, so I think, I feel good about that. But this one, we'll see how out of control this one goes, because this is a lifestyle question, really. So from Parenti Sound System asks, what is your take on Rudolf Steiner and theosophy, anthroposophy? We're looking at sending the kids to a Waldorf-inspired school, and I'm familiar with some of the basics, but I'm wondering what your view is.
Well, yeah, I mean, Waldorf-inspired is, I guess, different from Waldorf, so I don't know. I mean, that could just be, well, like, what really... It's hard to say, like, a Waldorf school would be, like, so much worse than sending your kids to, like, a public school where, like, they might have to do, like, a pedo-devised sex ed curriculum or something, Like,
yeah, that's true. Really... That's true.
But, yeah, well, I mean, anthroposophy, I mean, obviously, Rudolf Steiner was super influenced by theosophy and was, like, a former theosophist, like, just straight up.
Yes,
he was, like, really big into Blavatsky. I think he broke with her mainly over the fact that she was all about, like, Hinduism, as we've kind of discussed, or Aryan beliefs, and he wanted to be a bit more into Christianity. A bit more Christian, but also, like, German idealism, and a little bit of Rosie Cross stuff, which I guess
he was kind of into that.
Yeah,
and,
Johann Wolfgang Goethe. Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, I'm just, I know a little bit about Rudolf Steiner, and I've been seeing his name pop up a little more often lately. I think Jason Horsley over at the Liminalist has become kind of pretty interested in Steiner. Maybe that's where Parenti had maybe sparked his interest, but I think you probably can't do any worse. I mean, I was looking at, like, Waldorf education. I'm sure it probably varies from school to school to some degree, but it all sounds nice. It sounds
they
like
still believe in the humors at, like, some Waldorf school, or like that they use the framework of the 4 humors to, like, evaluate kids. Like, do they have, like, a phlegmatic temperament? Or they have a sanguine temperament, and stuff like that. I mean, there is, like, some weird esoteric stuff in, like, anthroposophy. I don't know, like, obviously it's gonna be more present in certain schools. If it's Waldorf inspired, it's probably more, like, with the pedagogical, like, aspects of it, rather than, like, the real nitty gritty of Steiner's ideas, and things like that. But yeah, like, they definitely uphold the, the four elements, the four humors, the four temperaments.
Yeah, I mean, I see. I see that like many of Steiner's ideas influence the pedagogy of the original Waldorf school and still play a central role in modern Waldorf classrooms, including subjects like reincarnation, karma, the existence of gnomes, and eurythmy, which is that
gnomes. That's cool.
The existence of gnomes.
Or interesting. My Waldorf student son believes in gnomes, and that's fine with me. From the Atlantic. It's not a bad thing for kids to grow up thinking differently than their parents.
Okay.
Word. Wow, this is by Noah Berlatsky.
Oh wow, really?
Fame, that, like,
wait,
he
he sends his child to Waldorf school. His child believes in gnomes, and it's fine with him. Is that did I have that all correct? Okay.
This
what
is
does
a
it
great
say?
article. I have arguments with my 9-year-old son about gnomes. They go more or less like my arguments with him about Santa Claus. They don't exist, I tell him. They do. Okay, so for one, it's like funny that this dude is like, since he's saying they go like his arguments with him about Santa Claus, he's literally like screaming at his 9-year-old son that Santa isn't real. Like, that's really weird as a parent, I think. But anyway, like very inversion of your normal parent-child dynamic. But anyway, so he says he argues with his son about gnomes and about Santa, saying they don't exist. I tell him they do too. He tells me, don't mess with them, they'll get you. Then he looks at me with wide eyes and tries to start giggling. Gnomes, or technically earth spirits, are big at Waldorf schools, especially in early grades. My son knitted a super cute one when he was in preschool. Now he's in 3rd grade at Urban Prairie Waldorf School. They faded into the background behind arithmetic and Chinese and building models. They're gonna teach you Chinese.
Is this
Joe
like is there like a LaRouche overlap to this school? Because it almost sounds like, I don't know. They want you to learn Mandarin and sing songs praising Trump. And wait, hold on. Did he say that his child had like dated a gnome in preschool?
No. He knitted one. Sorry.
Oh, he knitted one.
He
Okay,
knitted
sorry.
one.
Because I was gonna go. That was gonna send me off the charts. Attacking.
That's some McMartin stuff where he's like, "Hello, Dad, I'm dating a gnome." That's nice.
Talk about like pedo curriculum, like times 1,000. Like create a tulpa and have a relationship with him. No, not my kid. Anyways, so sorry.
It is kind of weird that they. Like, okay, like, what? Like, I mean, I guess I kind of believe in gnomes, like, in a way. Like, I guess I believe gnomes are a form of jinn, sort of. But I just want to know, like, what are they saying about gnomes? Like, why are they saying they're, like, kindly earth spirits that you should worship? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, like what? I mean, what does Noah Berlatsky say about it? What if he's the kind of person that yells at his child about not believing in Santa Claus?
Well, he thinks his son will grow out of his belief in gnomes. And even though the school is weird, he says, how can I entrust my child to a school that doesn't accord with my own religious and spiritual beliefs? How can I expose my boy to an ideology that I believe is largely nonsense? What, in short, is wrong with me? In response, I would say, first, that while I'm not on board with all of Waldorf philosophy, I am absolutely on board with parts of it. And those are, I think, the most important parts. I would rather have my 9-year-old learn about gnomes by a long shot than spend his school days preparing for a multiple choice test designed by some distant bureaucrat. I love that recess and flopping about in the mud in all weather and movement, that's Waldorf for Jim, are considered not discardable extras but central parts of learning. And I really love that his gym teacher is not encouraging him, as my public school gym teacher encouraged me, to pick on the kids in class who were weaker, or in one case, on the kid who had to wear braces on his legs. I mean, that was like in the 40s.
Yeah,
like when you were a kid, you know, like it was in the 60s. Like,
I don't know I don't know how old this guy is, but
he's old as hell. He's old, like way too old to act the way he acts on Twitter. But like,
no, he's like a Gen Xer. I'm looking at his picture right now, and he's got a little kid, so he's not that old. But like he probably went to high school in like the 80s, where there was like a lot more bullying going on. Which like if you went to like any kind of woke school in like a big city nowadays, like I would be highly surprised.
The gym teacher would not be encouraging you to pick on someone with like cystic fibrosis, or he would be getting fired. Like that would not be happening.
So I mean, that is weird when you kind of like people think too much about like, oh, the things that like regular school had that was bad, but like they're thinking about like 20, 30 years ago, and as opposed to looking at like what is it like today, you know? I mean, I don't know. I mean, he can do what he wants with this kid. It sounds like certain aspects of this are like nice, you know. It's like, okay, like, yeah, focus more on playing and like activities. And
it's weird how he would be upset that his schools. I mean, I don't believe like in like, you know, I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea. I mean, I guess I do in a way subscribe to intelligent design, but I feel like intelligent design is like problematic because it's sort of like, you know, God has power over everything. Like, we don't think that like he just like nudged some processes and have power over in certain ways, like designing it intelligent. Like, you know, it's like kind of a weird fake compromise. Like, but Noah Berlatsky says that, you know, if his school were teaching intelligent design, I want to ask some questions. Why is that worse than gnomes?
Yeah, well, because it attacks one of the pillars.
It's religious. It's religious.
Yeah, it's religious. Yeah. Exactly. I mean,
gnomes,
he does.
Like, yeah, exactly. Gnomes are paganistic, so that's okay. Like, if his school was teaching about Baphomet, that would be fine, because that's not religious.
I mean, he does throw a bone out that, like, that, you know, in his Jewish community center growing camp that his son went to, there were a lot of African American kids there, and that, you know, not all students in Catholic schools are Catholic by a long shot, which is true. And like, I went to Catholic school. That's another thing people do with Catholic schools is like they assume that like nuns still beat children in Catholic school. Like, I think, I swear, and maybe it's more of an East Coast thing that even people I know my own age who went to Catholic schools, like, still, and certainly my parents, like, there was beating going on in all those schools. It was, like, pretty hardcore. But, like, I went to Catholic school in California, in, like, the Bay Area, so it was, like, very Jesuit and, like, relatively hippy-dippy, and really not that much different than, like, going to a public school, except there were, like, certain aspects of it. And there were a bunch of kids there that were not Catholic, or like maybe nominally were, but like didn't go there because they wanted to get like indoctrinated with some religious stuff. And I think they pretty much just taught us evolution. They didn't even go with the intelligent design, which some like trad cats were kind of into. I remember back in those days. But like there is something to be said like for going to sending your kid to a school, even though they have some beliefs that you don't necessarily subscribe to. But gnomes, I don't know, like
I just don't know what is actually like the practical function of gnomes. Like, I want to know
like
what
why,
cosmology
in what
gnomes
context?
are embedded in. I want to know the larger cosmology that gnomes are embedded in, because it raises some questions like, what is the larger utility of gnomes? Because, like, you know, for instance, jinn is a word that is used to explain, as we have on the podcast, a number of phenomena that are encountered in the world. It's a useful explanatory system. Gnomes, I believe, can function the same way, although it's like kind of like a subcategory of earth spirits, which is very odd, you know, that you would isolate that, because I feel like gnomes always... I mean, actually, you know, the roots of gnomes is gay nomos in Greek, meaning like, in the same way that fish are considered to be thalassanomos, which is like sea law. The gnomes, they gay nomos. They have the earth law, and they move through the earth as the fish move through the water. So they've always been embedded in the system of these different elemental beings. So to isolate the gnomes on their own is odd in itself, and kind of like it gestures to a larger cosmology, and just one wonders what the function of them is. But I don't really know. Like what it is for the Waldorf people. I mean, I know that Steiner has some beliefs that are like even more alarming, arguably, than the idea of gnomes. Yeah.
Like, I mean, what would you say are some of the most alarming for Parenti here? Parenti the parent,
probably,
you know,
like
their kid.
What's the Lucifer stuff? If you're like not into Lucifer, like probably. I don't know. Like, I mean, the gnome stuff. We have Noah Berlatsky's testimony that those things are still. You know, obviously, like, an element of Waldorf education, which is interesting. Like, you know, even though he would throw a hissy fit if they taught his kid that angels were real, like, it's fine if no... You know,
exactly.
Yeah. But, yeah, like, but the stuff about like Lucifer and the importance of like the Luciferian instinct in people is probably like up there in terms of like the wackiest stuff of Steiner's beliefs. I mean, really, like anthroposophy is very similar to theosophy, or at least it is clear theosophical roots, and the Eurythmy stuff kind of reminds me a little bit of like Gurdjieffian movement stuff, but I would like to do a Gurdjieff episode at some point and talk about that. And I mean, that's not really like that's in terms of thinking about sending your kid. I don't know if Eurythmy is like something that actually sounds like probably like a fun use of time for a kid. Like, I don't know, the dance, like spiritual inspired stuff. Like, that's not, I mean, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
Like, the Luciferian impulse. But it is interesting. I mean, he did ask our general thoughts on Steiner, so
well, we're being general. About like
some of his Luciferic thoughts. Yeah.
If you have a passage there where he talks about, he gave these lectures on Lucifer and Ahriman, which were these like these two deities that he sets up as basically the two poles of evil, and that like Christ. It like kind of walks the tightrope in perfect balance between the two, which is that's a good, interesting way of looking at things. But like, do you want to read a little more like
I'm looking
what does that
for
mean?
A good aspect of Luciferic wisdom, like or a good passage that indicates Luciferic wisdom. So he thinks that Lucifer was actually incarnated in China at some point in like the ancient past, and that was kind of the source of a lot of quote-unquote classical wisdom, like Greek wisdom and things like that.
Around 3000 BC, somewhere around there.
Yes.
What happened?
In the east of Asia, he became a teacher, and from him went forth what is described as the pre-Christian pagan culture, which still survived in the gnosis of the earliest Christian centuries. It would be wrong to pass derogatory judgment on this Lucifer culture. For all the beauty produced by Greek civilization, even the insight that is still alive in ancient Greek philosophy and the tragedies of Aeschylus would have been impossible without this Lucifer incarnation. The influence of the Lucifer incarnation was still powerful in the south of Europe, in the north of Africa, and in Asia Minor. Of course it was, in the first centuries of Christendom. And when the mystery of Golgotha had taken place on earth, it was essentially the Luciferic wisdom through which it could be understood. The gnosis, which set about the task of grasping the import of the mystery of Golgotha, was impregnated through and through with Luciferic wisdom. It must therefore be emphasized, firstly, that at the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC, there was a Chinese incarnation of Lucifer. At the beginning of our own era, the incarnation of Christ took place. And to begin with, the significance of the incarnation of Christ was grasped because of the power of the old Lucifer incarnation that still survived. This power did not actually fade from man's faculty of comprehension until the 4th century AD, and even then it had its aftermaths and ramifications. To these two incarnations, the Lucifer incarnation in ancient times and the incarnation of the Christ, which gave the earth its meaning, a third incarnation will be added in a future not so very far distant. And the events of the present time are already moving in such a way as to prepare for it. Alright, the incarnation of Lucifer at the beginning of the 3rd millennium BC, we must say, through Lucifer, man has acquired the faculty of using the organs of his intellect, of his power of intellectual discernment. It was Lucifer himself in a human body who was the first to grasp the power of intellect, what formerly could be imparted to man only through revelation, namely the content of the mysteries. Okay, so,
that's,
yes.
Not really sure. I mean, it sounds super Gnostic.
Yeah, Lucifer and Ahriman are both, like, generally bad, but, or, like, the excessive Luciferianness is bad, because that, but you need a little bit of it. And you need a little bit of Ahriman as well. Because Ahriman has, like, technology, and stuff. I don't know what other good aspects Ahriman has.
Just to take it back, maybe to just, because I saw this, and I feel like Parenti is going to want to know this, that the first Waldorf-inspired high school was launched in 2008 with assistance from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So, okay. Anyways, so Ahriman does something, like, there's something good about that. Like, in general, it's like nihilistic. He destroys the idea of God. Lucifer makes man into a god, but you need a little bit of both. Yeah, exactly. But you need a little bit of both of those things. Yeah, he's all about. He does seem to be all about balancing different kind of forces in both like society and in your personal self and in like your approach to like, I guess. I don't know if I would say your approach to ethics or morality, because he's not necessarily being like, he's not like an O9A person who's like go out and like kill somebody and then like do an act of charity or something like that. Like he kind of advocates this like middle road of wouldn't you say, kind of?
Yeah,
I mean, he's not like explicitly telling you like go out and be satanic at all, but he's like saying that there are certain maybe Luciferian traits that are beneficial to mankind, but just like if you take them too far, basically. Yeah,
so he's basically saying that the evil. Antichrist. Okay, well maybe not the Antichrist, but Ahriman is going to come. The same way that there was a Lucifer in the West in ancient times, and then there was a Christ in the middle. There's going to be an Ahriman who's going to come in the West, and that can't be averted. It's inevitable, for men must confront Ahriman face to face. He will be the individuality by whom we made clear to men what indescribable cleverness can be developed. They call to their help all that earthly forces can do to enhance cleverness and ingenuity. In the catastrophes that will befall humanity in the near future, men will become extremely inventive. Many things discovered in the forces and substances of the universe will be used to provide nourishment for man. Okay, so he's right. This is 1919, by the way. But these very discoveries will at the same time make it apparent that matter is connected with the organs of intellect, not with the organs of the spirit, but of the intellect. People will learn what to eat and drink in order to become really clever. Eating and drinking cannot make them spiritual, but clever and astute, yes. Men have no knowledge of these things as yet. But not only will they be striven for, they will be the inevitable outcome of catastrophes looming in the near future. And certain secret societies, where preparations are already in train, will apply these things in such a way that necessary conditions can be established for an actual incarnation of Ahriman on the earth. This an evil AI? This incarnation cannot be averted. For men must realize, it seems like it, during the time of the Earth's existence, just how much can proceed from purely material processes. He must learn to bring under his control those spiritual and unspiritual currents which are leading to Ahriman. So maybe you want your kid to go to the school so be prepared for the Antichrist, or get into one of the secret societies that know about his approach. I don't know. Or maybe you don't want to make a pact with Ahriman. I don't know. But anyway, and Ahriman is coming, and he says, nowadays there is much talk about the spirit, but you who accept spiritual science should not be deluded by such chattering. You should perceive the difference between it and the descriptions of the spiritual world attempted in anthroposophy, where the spiritual world is described as objectively as a physical world. You should probe into these differences, reminding yourselves repeatedly that abstract talk of the spirit is a deviation from sincere striving for the spirit, and that by their talk, people are actually removing themselves from the spirit. Purely intellectual allusion to the spirit leads nowhere. What then is intelligence? What is the content of our human intelligence? I can best explain this in the following way. Imagine, and this will be better understood by the many ladies present. Imagine yourself standing in front of a mirror and looking into it. Cancelled. The picture presented to you by the mirror is you, but it has no reality at all. It is nothing but a reflection. All the intelligence within your soul, all the intellectual content, is only a mirror image. It has no reality. And just as your reflected image is called into existence through the mirror, so what mirrors itself as intelligence is called into existence through the physical apparatus of your body, through the brain. Man is intelligent only because his body is there. And as little as you can touch yourself by stretching your hand towards your reflective image, as little as you can lay hold of the spirit if you turn only to the intellectual. For the spirit is not there. What is grasped with the intellect, ingenious as it may be, never contains the spirit itself, but only a picture of spirit. Alright, fair enough. So, to distinguish the mere picture from the reality, that is the task of the tenor of the soul, which does not merely theorize about spiritual science, but has actual perception of the spirit. That is what I wanted to say to you today in order to intensify the earnestness which should pervade our whole attitude to the spiritual life as conceived by anthroposophy. For the evolution of humanity in the future will depend upon how truly this attitude is adopted by men of the present day. If what I have characterized in this lecture continues to be offered to the reception that is still offered, the reception that is still offered to it today by the vast majority of people on the earth, then Ahriman will be an evil guest when he comes. So people continue to not like my lectures, then Ahriman will be evil. But if men are able to rouse themselves to take into their consciousness what we have been studying, if they are able to so guide it that humanity can freely confront the Ahrimanic influence, then when Ahriman appears, men will acquire, precisely through him, the power to realize that although the Earth must enter inevitably into its decline, mankind is lifted above earthly existence through this very fact. When a man has reached a certain age in physical life, his body begins to decline, but if he is sensible, he makes no complaint, knowing that together with his soul, he is approaching a life that does not run parallel with his physical decline. There lives in mankind something that is not bound up with the already prevailing decline of the physical earth, but becomes more and more spiritual just because of this physical decline.
Okay.
That's weird. I don't necessarily like that so much.
Yeah. Just like
that's
what,
like,
so, okay.
You know,
like he's
some of
talking...
that is like, you know, I don't think that, like, again, with all this theosophy stuff, like, I don't think there's like stuff that's like, you know, Hawk adjacent in it, but like something susses me out about the idea that like, oh, the more we despoil the earth, like we're gonna become spiritually advanced. You know, we're gonna like, you know,
gonna become
as the
sus
earth
AI
dies,
god light beings.
The earth is yeah, exactly. Like the earth is a cocoon that must be left behind for us to arrive at our nanite existence through the power of Ahriman.
Talk about a To the Stars Academy.
Yeah, I mean, I would be sending my kid to like an Islamic school if it were me, not a school founded by like exactly, not a school necessarily founded by this guy, but at the same time, like, you know,
I don't know either.
They're not going to be teaching you this, probably your kid this. They're going to be teaching him about gnomes to prepare him for the future when he can engage with Ahriman. It's interesting how they're spirits of the earth, the gnomes. I mean, who are the gnomes serving? That's what I want to know. Who do the gnomes work for?
Right, who do they work for? And just for Perenzi's benefit, because I believe he is... sympathetic to Marxism, just to talk real briefly about the relationship between Rudolf Steiner, who, you know, was German or Austrian, and you know, had a lot, was at kind of like his peak like productivity and influence like right after World War I. And had a lot to say about Marxism and communism. Also worth pointing out that, and now he was persecuted by the Nazis. I think at various points, Hitler called him a Jew, or like a crypto Jew, or, you know, somebody who's like working for Jews to, like, you know, spread this bullshit. And I think basically he had to close his schools once the Nazis came to power. However, after the Second World War, I guess he opened back up, but just reading here, Waldorf schools in East Germany, after not too long, were closed by the DDR educational authorities, who justified this as follows: the pedagogy was based on the needs of children rather than on the needs of society, was too pacifistic, and had failed to structure itself according to pure Marxist-Leninist principles. So, okay, there's that. Also, Waldorf schools completely exploded across Central and Eastern Europe after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and there are many of them in China now, maybe at least a few dozen. But there was another article more directly to the source. There's an interesting little thing that he wrote called Marxism and the Threefold Society in 1919. I'll just read a little bit from it. You can get a sense maybe of, like, I don't know, if you want your kids, if you want your little young pioneer children listening to this guy, maybe you do. It's not that bad, but okay. He says that, this is in 1919, it is impossible to be free of the social chaos in which Europe is mired if certain long-standing social demands are made with a distorting lack of clarity. Such a demand, one that prevails in many circles, is contained in Frederick Engels' book, The Evolution of Socialism from Utopia to Science, in which he writes, quote, "Instead of controlling people, controlling products and production processes must prevail." Many proletarian leaders, as well as the proletarian masses, adhere to this viewpoint. In a certain sense, it is correct. The human relations which have developed in modern states have formed administrative bodies that not only control products and production processes, but also the people engaged in those processes. Economics consists of the management of products and the various production processes. In modern times, it has taken on forms which make it necessary that this management no longer includes controlling people as well. Marx and Engels realized this. They directed their attention to how both capital capital and human labor are active in economic processes. They felt that modern humanity is striving to go beyond the way the system is organized, for it creates the means for capital to exert power over human labor. It not only serves to manage and control products and production, it also provides the excuse for controlling people. From this, Marx and Engels concluded that controlling people must be excluded from the economic processes. They were right. For modern life does not permit that human beings be treated as mere appendages of objects and production processes, and that they be included in the control of same. Marx and Engels believed, however, that the matter could be resolved by simply excluding the control of human beings from the economic process and leaving only a newly purified management organized by the state. They did not realize that in the old way there is something that organizes relations between people which cannot be left unorganized. They will not simply organize themselves if detached from the old way. Nor did they see that the source for the organization and control of products and branches of production is found in capital. Through the detour of capital, the human spirit manages the economy. By managing goods and production, however, one does not nurture the human spirit, which always creates anew, and which must provide new forces to the economy if it is not to ossify and eventually crumble. What Marx and Engels saw was correct. The control of the economy should not include the control over men, and that capital, which serves the economy, should not acquire power over the human spirit which it needs to show it the way. But their fateful error was to believe that both human relations and management of the economy by the human spirit would somehow continue when they are no longer administered by the economy itself. The purging of the economy, that is, limiting it to the management of products and production processes, is only possible if accompanied by something that takes the place of the old system of control and something else which enables the human spirit to be the real leader of the economic process. This role is provided by the concept of the threefold social organism. An independent cultural spiritual organization will supply the economy with the spiritual forces it needs if it limits itself to the management and control of goods and production processes. And the rights sector of the social organism, the political state, when separated from the cultural and economic spheres, will be able to democratically govern human relations in such a way that no individual, through capacities or economic influence, will have power over others. Marx and Engels' viewpoint in respect to the demand for a reformation of economic life was correct but one-sided. They didn't see that economic life can only be free if an independent rights sector and an independent cultural sphere are placed alongside it. Which form economic life must take in the future can only be seen when we are clear that the capitalistic economic orientation in which economic power controls human relations must be replaced by a spiritual one. The demand for an economy that is only occupied by producing goods can never be realized alone. Whoever advocates this wants to create an economy which has thrown off what is necessary for its existence and expects it to continue to exist without it. Under different living conditions, but from profound experience, Goethe wrote two things which are applicable to many social demands of our times. The first is, a deficient truth works for a while. Instead of complete illumination, though, a blinding falsehood suddenly enters. The world is satisfied, and centuries are deceived. The second is, generalizations and extreme arrogance are the path to terrible harm. Truthfully, Marxism, having learned nothing from the conditions of our times, is a deficient truth, which, despite this, has an effect on the proletarian worldview. But after the catastrophic First World War, instead of being applicable to the true demands of the times, it has become a blinding falsehood, which must be prevented from deceiving centuries. The wish to prevent it is the inclination of those who recognize the harm that the proletariat is rushing into because of this deficient truth, from which have arisen generalizations, the arrogant supporters of which reject as utopian everything that is trying to replace their truly utopian generalizations with the realities of life. There's a note here at the end which is kind of interesting, editor's note. The treatment of people to be controlled as objects in the economic process was confirmed in the early 60s by the Friedman-oriented Chicago School, which defined the, quote, labor market in which human labor is bought and sold as though it were an object, a modified form of slavery. So I guess he predicted, I don't know, so I mean he ended up being kind of somewhat sympathetic to Marxism, but ultimately kind of against it. The threefold theory that he talks about, the threefold society, is basically the idea that you would have like a culture and spiritual kind of sphere of society, and then you would have an economic sphere, and then a rights-based political sphere, and the idea would be to like balance the powers of all three. And in his conception, theocracy is what happens when you tilt too far to the spiritual side, and it dominates the others. And state socialism, communism is an example of when you let the political state have supremacy over the other two. And then of course you have like bourgeois, like American capitalism, Western capitalism, if you let the economic sphere basically dominate everything. So his like idea, I guess, I would assume that to some extent this is like, I don't know whether this idea is like operating in Waldorf schools to this day, but that seemed to be like at the crux of his philosophy. It was like, oh, you got to balance all these things. It also sounds a little new agey and a little hippie, but I think he also, his emphasis on like the spiritual component and how I think it's not, I wouldn't totally gulag him for all of his critiques of the way Marxists were like the way they were kind of employing those observations by Marx and Engels, and thinking that if you just control the production process, I mean, I think you saw it even with communists in the 20th century, like Mao realizing that like pedagogy and thought reform, things like that, and like political education and like education through practice and all those things were like really, really important. And you couldn't just like take over the commanding heights and then like have a communist society. There was like a lot of deeper things that needed to be balanced out, and like you needed to replace, if you're going to take away kind of the I guess maybe the spiritual conduit or engine inside of capitalism, for all of its ills, you need to replace it with something else that like gives meaning and blah blah blah, and that's going to be found in a kind of creative spiritual dimension, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still, but then him talking about how Ahriman's going to come back and like,
and how we have to, like, I mean, at least he is kind of anti-Ahriman, and like, I kind of like, in a way, it's kind of interesting how he's like, we need to, I feel like it's a maybe a legitimate view that he's like, we need to, prepare ourselves for Ahriman and like study the secret science so that we can watch out. But like a lot of it is pretty sus. He's like, we need to acquire powers from Ahriman. And it's kind of like Saruman like stuff a little bit. We must join with him. Like, we have to like we got to go to the devil to beat the devil. It's. Yeah, a little bit like, I don't know. I'd say, there's other things to look into with him, but I would encourage you to do. I've been going down a rabbit hole of like reading about Ahriman and gnomes. It's interesting how like he like is talking about the decline of the Earth, and that's just an important teaching having to do with the rise of Ahriman. If this lack of enthusiasm in human souls at the present time for the content of spiritual science were to persist, the first impulse towards the rigidification of the earth would emanate from the souls of men themselves, from their apathy, their indolence, and love of ease. If you reflect this rigidification as the aim of the Ahrimanic powers, you will not be surprised that compression, the feeling that life is becoming granite-like, is one of the experiences that must be undergone, the struggle for the wisdom of the future. Yes, it's the idea of the air, like we talked about, like certain beings like birds move through the air, gnomes move through the earth. We're all becoming gnomes in this Ahrimanic age, oh my god. There's even a lecture where he talks about gnomes. Gnomes laugh at us to scorn an account of the groping, struggling understanding with which we manage to grasp one thing or another, whereas they have no need at all to make use of thought. They have direct perception of what is comprehensible in the world. They are particularly ironical when they notice the efforts people have to make to come to this or that conclusion. Why should they do this to the gnomes? Why ever should people give themselves so much trouble to think things over? We know everything we look at. People are so stupid to the gnomes. They must think things over. And he says thinking is Luciferic, actually, in his other thing. So maybe...
Yeah, he does. But, like, not necessarily a bad thing, but it is Luciferic.
It's necessary, but we don't want too much of it. We need to get it from him, and he's bad, but... And it was necessary, but, yeah, I don't know. Like, and he does love Goethe, and he says Goethe had nothing Luciferic in his thinking, but if there's not enough Luciferic stuff, then you'll be chauvinistic, which is interesting.
Okay.
Because Lucifer is all about unifying. The moment you generalize or unify, at that moment you are nearing Luciferic thinking. If you were to contemplate each human individual, each single plant, each single animal, each single stone in itself alone, having in mind the one single object, not classifying into genera or species, not generalizing in your thought, then you would be little prone to Luciferic thinking. But anyone who were to attempt such a thing, even as a child, would not ever get beyond the lowest class in a modern school. I don't know.
Okay. I mean,
to a madrasa. But, like...
No, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of there's just there is pushback out there against and I even just looked on like a review of a what's it called? Yeah, Waldorf school in the United States, and it has like mostly positive reviews, but also a few like very, very negative ones. There's like 3 or 4. 5, the school is inflexible and dogmatic in its approach. Kids get bullied. They not good for special needs children. But then other people are like, yes, it's amazing. Like, there's so many cool, like, wonderful things about it. I guess one study conducted by Cal State Sacramento, researchers outlined numerous theories and ideas prevalent throughout Waldorf curricula that were patently pseudoscientific and steeped in magical thinking. These included the ideas that animals evolved from humans, that human spirits are physically incarnated into, quote, soul qualities that manifested themselves into various animal forms, and that the current geological formations on Earth have evolved through so-called Lumerian and Atlantean epochs, and that the 4 kingdoms of nature are mineral, plant, animal, and man. All of these are directly contradicted by mainstream scientific knowledge and have no basis in any form of controversial scientific studies. And I guess, like some people... there's things about magnetism. Yeah, go ahead.
Everywhere you will find that materialistic science describes matters as follows. The plant takes root in the ground. Above the ground it develops its leaves, finally unfolding its blossoms. Within the blossoms, the stamens and the seed bud. Now, usually from another plant, the pollen from the anthers, from the pollen vessels, is carried over to the germ, which is then fructified. And through this, the seed of the new plant is produced. The germ is regarded by as the female element, and what comes from the stamens as the male. Indeed, matters cannot be regarded otherwise as long as people remain fixed in materialism, for then this process really does look like a fructification. This, however, it is not. In order to gain insight into the process of fructification, that is to say the process of reproduction in the plant world, we must be conscious that in the first place it is from the great chemist, the Undines, is from what they bring about in the plants, and from what the sylphs bring about, those are the forest spirits, that the plant form arises. The ideal plant form which sinks into the ground and is preserved by the gnomes. It is there below this plant form. And there within the earth it is now guarded by the gnomes, after they have seen it, after they have looked upon it. The earth becomes the mother womb for what thus seeps downwards. This is something quite different from what is described in materialistic science. I don't understand why Noah Berlatsky, like, finds this so much more offensive than the idea that, like, God, like, is in, like, all these processes that, like, you know, are, as we currently understand them. Like, why do we need to, like...
Fact check.
Yeah. It's not offensive to me to believe that intermediary daemons, like, are controlling the wind and the rain, but if you say that, like, there's God... That's fact check, like you know, like whatever.
Yeah. Also, Waldorf education also has a lot of links with UNESCO, which was founded, I believe, by Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley's brother.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, not to like discourage you too much from this. Like, if you've investigated the school on yourself, like you'd know better. But I mean, I don't know what you expected for us to say about this guy. Like, you knew what you were gonna get.
We're only dog parents.
We're not parents.
So,
No.
But I hope.
I mean, I told you what I would be doing with my own child, or heavily trying to do.
Madrasa.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my standard recommendation, but I
can't say which way I would go yet. Would I retreat back into the reactionary, bosom of a Catholic education for my own children, where at least I, better the psyop than the one you don't. I don't know, but good luck with that, Parenti.
Yes, good luck. I'm sure whatever decision you make will be the right one. You know their situation the best.
Exactly. It's your lived experience. Go get them. And just, But okay.
Well, maybe if you have a PTA meeting, just bring up Ar-Rahman and ask what they think.
Yeah.
When can he be expected? To incarnate in the West? Yeah.
It's we got 3 minutes 14 seconds. 3 hours 14.
Ask who the gnomes work for. Who do the gnomes work for?
Who do they work for? Indeed. Yeah. Yes. Are they jinn? Why aren't they learning about jinn? Etc.
I mean, in Islam, we don't believe that jinn are like necessary for these, natural processes. We don't really think angels are even. Like, angels have certain offices, but like, as the Quran says, like, Allah is the one who like causes the plants to grow and things like that, and he does so by the processes that we observe and understand. Like, there's not like any need for these kind of like, shirky mediaries. Like, I don't like I'm just saying, like, why? Like, very bizarre, but whatever. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. We finally did it. We got
Q&A 4 done.
Yeah,
so Q&A 4, next time it's gonna be one episode. Q&A 5 is gonna be one episode, inshallah. But. Yeah,
I think
we'll see.
These questions just hit they hit some nerves, and
they definitely hit some nerves. There was like a Mark Fisher question, etc. There was a chance to whine about like Hollywood and film.
Exactly.
There was like
the
a
DPRK.
Reptoid related one. John D. Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of meaty stuff here. Yeah, so
exactly. But that's what we're here for, to take it. So if anybody wants to join the Grotto via Patreon, you can make the next month's one even longer, and we will answer your question. So
we will get to it. Yes,
we will get to it eventually.
2 episodes, we'll do it.
Yeah. By golly, we won't give up. But
by golly, we will. Yes.
We will get out of here. But
watch out for gnomes.
Watch out for gnomes. Watch out for the North Pole.
Appearing sometimes in the form of a gnome. Yeah.
Watch out for
Ahriman.
Yeah, Soklas, Ahriman, Yaldabaoth as usual. Don't trust acid. Don't take a bunch of LSD and try to like form a vanguard party with some gin or something to recreate the 60s. It's not going to work.
Exactly. Don't worship the Klaxton men or whatever. Just relax. Just chill.
Don't reinvent yourself every morning when you wake up. Just chill out and get going. Do your thing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You don't need to rebuild yourself. Just get out of bed and get on your typewriter and punch it like a Tommy gun and write something that isn't about how we need to balance the harmonic impulse with the Christic impulse and the Luciferic impulse, and just get out of bed. Just go pray. Just go pray to Allah and not to a gnome. Word.
And
right.
So that's it for now. And remember all those things, and stay vigilant.
Peace.
In this age of darkness, we have blotted out the sun, worshipped our creations and what we'd become. In our narrow-mindedness, with blinkered shortened sight, we praised the works of Ahriman and followed him gathered up the minerals, built juggernaut machines to look for God inside what we created. Atoms we collided at humanity's expense. Costly wars, agendas, and experiments. When will we learn? You've been gone so long, you're still far ahead of your time. Gone so long, 100 years ahead of your time. Years before my time, you showed a way out of the maze to homeless souls despondent and disheartened. Revelations poured through every word you had to say. You told them of the future, those who listened. With every generation, a new